think we're on. Yes, we are on. Hey, folks. What's today? Wednesday? I don't even normally do lives on Wednesday, but hey, happy Wednesday, y'all. Yeah, we got a whole lot to cover. It's been an eventful day and week and everything, right? So let me go ahead and read some of the comments here and then we'll jump into it. By the way, I'm in a really good mood in like just as of right now, because you know how sometimes you have a song that's in your head and you can't figure out what it is. It was a specific jazz, like a smooth jazz song, and I couldn't figure it out because there were no words to it, right? It's just the melody. And so I was trying to like search it up because the only words that are in the song are just like do 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 do, right? And so when I kept typing it in, the only thing that would pop up would be like Stevie Wonder as. I'm like, no, it's not that song. And then finally, I figured it out. It was Norman Brown, Out of Nowhere. And the only reason I figured it out was because while I was doing the notes for this live, I had like a smooth jazz playlist on, and the song came on. And I was like, yes, I know it. So it's that. Like I could not figure out that song to save my life. So I'm in a good mood, at least for that. That's about it. Everything else is some nonsense. All right, so let's read some hellos in here. It's been a little chaotic. Hello, Mary Jo Lisa. Hello, could you please possibly do a video and speak on the lack of black men in higher ed? There's a Philly Tribune article on it. At black colleges, the stubborn gender enrollment gap keeps growing. You know what? I just actually did a podcast. I got to get the name of it because I'm always saying yes to everything, and sometimes I don't write all the details down. But I just did a podcast about black men in higher ed as far as on the teaching side. But I did see the article you're referencing with regard to just the number of black males that are no longer really attending as far as that gender gap. I think what I'll do, I'll probably have it in a separate topic. We can still talk about it tonight, but I definitely want to go a little bit more in depth where I can have my numbers and stuff. And it's wild because I literally yesterday had a very in-depth conversation with one of my old kids who's now 19. And he's kind of in this journey where he's in school, but he don't really want to be there. It's not really great. And so he and I just had this very extensive conversation just about life and everything, because I get it. I know when I was in undergrad, y'all know I love me some Howard, but I did not like my freshman year at all. Like I did not fit in right away. I didn't really find my tribe. It was the culture shock of going from a small town like Spanaway and moving to a place like DC. It was a lot of things. So I wasn't really excited to come back my sophomore year, but I knew I didn't want to go back home to Spanaway. So I was like, I'll make this work. And fortunately, by the time I got to the end of my sophomore year, things started to align. And then my junior year and senior year were just a great time, to the point where I was one of the people boo-hooing at graduation because I didn't want to leave. But I think there's so many layers to that conversation. And I think there's so much happening in the world at the same time. So I would definitely love to go a little bit deeper in that. Maybe we can talk about it at the end of the live and with some chats and stuff. But I didn't write it in my initial 50,000 pages of notes. But we can definitely talk about it. I do want to still go a bit more in depth with that, though. Calvin, how's the weight gain been since you got sick? Like I said, I'm about like 7-8 pounds away from where I want to be. I finally found me a new gym that's close to where I moved and stuff. So, and that gym is 24 hours. So I am a night owl at the gym. I be at the gym at like 11 o'clock midnight because I like to go when ain't nobody in there. I don't like having to wait for machines. And then I got to be by all the real gym heads that are in there grunting and growling, and I don't want to be around that. So I like when there's almost nobody in the gym. That way I can, have my playlist cranking and I'm just in my own space and I feel good for that 45 minutes or that hour, however long I'm in there. Let's see. What up, Rashonda Fryson? Thank you for the nice comment. What up, Jalil? Avocado Queen. Make sure y'all thank her later on with some of that announcement I was talking about with Drop Your Cities. Remember, I told her to hold me to it. So y'all give her some kudos with that as we figure out some of these events in the next few weeks. What up? Julian, Steve. By the way, Julian, I want to do something different for you because I read your comment. Julian, drop your GoFundMe in the chat today, guys. Do not send me any super chats. If you want to donate to anybody, donate to Julian, because Julian's one of the people who, unfortunately, because of this stupid government we currently have, lost his job. So instead of giving me super chats because you like what I'm saying, I would rather you GoFundMe or Zelle or whatever he puts in the chat. give it to him. All right, that's the Julian Steve account. Okay. Um, let's see. Hey Calvin, did you move location? Yes, I knew I was not renewing that lease because I was tired of paying $3,100 a month to be in a 1-bedroom apartment. It was ridiculous. So yeah. What up, Alan? Let's see. All right, I gotta keep it moving. We have so much to talk about. Let's see. Is this mic still popping again? It might be because I'm too close to the speaker. Let me know if it's still doing it. I don't know why it's doing that crap. It's starting to get on my nerves. I hope it's still not doing that, but we'll see. It might be time to get a new mic. I done had this one for some good years here. Okay. A few other things. Yeah. All right. The like I said, New Jack Swing documentary drops Monday. I'm excited for you guys to see that. That was a lot of work, by the way. Trying to you want to capture everything, but you can't capture everything, because the thing about doing music related content when we're doing these long form deep dives is there's always going to be something that gets left out, and then somebody gets mad, and then somebody, because that one detail that's all of a half a second was left out, somebody will say the whole thing needs to just go in the trash. But I'm excited about it. I think I did a decent job, right? It's different from So What Happened, because at least with So What Happened, you're focused on one artist and one project and whatever happened. The Music Talks episodes, especially this one with New Jack Swing, we're covering just a bunch of different things. And I've gone to a few different segues into some various topics and conversations. Y'all know I like to put context with everything. So there will be some people who are like, oh my God, man, get to it already. We've been here for 30 minutes and we still ain't at the New Jack Swing part. But it is what it is. What else was I going to say? Oh, and so like I said, I'm trying to stay sane with all this craziness going on. There's a whole lot of different things happening. So I've been trying to just indulge in things that give me peace of mind. I just finished reading the Maurice White book from Earth, Wind & Fire. So for those who are music heads, or he just has a very interesting story. Anyway, that was a really good read. And if you don't feel like physically reading the book, or if you're like me, your eyes get tired after looking at pages for too long, you can listen to it on Audible. So it was a really great listen. And then last night, a good friend of mine, one of my concert buddies, I got like 3 people that I always go to concerts with. Let's see, is this telling me my sound is still off? Oh, okay. That's my little dog. All right. I got like 3 people I always go to concerts with, but my most consistent concert partner, like she and I be going to everything. But we went to the Tyler the Creator show last night. If you didn't know, Tyler's one of my favorite rappers that are current, right? And this is actually the 3rd time I have seen him. Really fun show. This was actually the last show of the first leg. He'll pick it back up, I think, in May or June. And I guess what I appreciate with his stage shows is that, there's the theatrics, there's staging, he has stage presence. And at this point, he has a nice catalog, because he has 8 studio albums, and that doesn't even include the stuff with Odd Future and the EPs and everything else. And so, great show. I don't really care for too many rap shows, because a lot of rappers, in my opinion, are boring on stage, but I think he's somebody that gives you your money's worth. Now, as far as them opening acts, one act was called Paris, Texas. I'll be honest, I've never heard of them. As we came in, they were already on, and they were using a different sound system than Tyler. So you know how when the bass is really thumping and you can feel the bass, but you can't make out anything that's being said. That was it. Maybe that was where we were sitting, but I couldn't hear nothing that was being said. But they looked like they could really get the crowd jumping, because the floor, it was standing room only in the arena for the floor seats. Now, we weren't going to be in the floor seats, not at that concert, because first of all, Tyler the Creator has a younger fan base. Like it felt like I was at work, because it was like nothing but teenagers in there, right? Mind you, a bunch of white kids too. And it was funny because when we sat down, I didn't know all the people heard me, but I was like, when I come in here, I bet not hear a whole bunch of N-words with none of these songs with all you people sitting around here, because I don't see no black folks or something like that. And then my friend was like, the kids next to you heard you. I was like, oh, okay. And then it was funny because it was like this white boy who was probably like 15 or 16 with his best friend. They kept censoring themselves with every song. And I was like, oh, I guess I got some pull up in here, because normally, a teenager be like, man, get out of here. But anyway, as far as opening act though, the other one was Lil Yachty. I'm sorry, I tried. I couldn't see just seeing that Tyler had such a great stage show. I don't know what Lil Yachty was up there doing. I was like, man. And then it didn't help when he was like announcing himself. He's like, all right, for the next 45 minutes. I said, 45? Oh, we got to sit through this for 45 minutes? We just sat through the other person, but like, okay. And Lil Yachty, he was acting like it was his show and it was his greatest hits to him. We were supposed to know all the words, so he ain't feel like rapping nothing. I was ready for him to get off the stage. I'm sorry. He can keep that. I only knew like 2 of his songs anyway, so I was good on that. But it was a funny show. I needed a good little escapism because it's been a time, y'all. And then I totally forgot that Mary J. Blige was here. I think last week. Totally forgot. I had the DC date and the Baltimore date mixed up. So DC already passed, but she is going to Baltimore on Friday. So who knows? Maybe I'll get a last minute ticket. I don't know. I'm gonna read a few more comments and then I'm actually jumping to the topics. I'm gonna be honest, literally every topic is something heavy. We don't really have any fun things until the very, 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 very end. So for all my music heads who like to talk music, that won't be to the very last portion. All right, let me just read a few comments here. Let's see. What up, Sarah? Am I touring soon? Well, I'm not necessarily touring, but I am doing a few things related to music. We'll talk about it a little bit towards the end. Oh, Calvin, when did I move? I moved the first week of March or second week of March. So literally just like 2-3 weeks ago. Okay. Yes, Avocado Queen, $3,100. Well, to be fair, that included parking because the parking was $300. So really, it was like $28. But still, y'all heard my story about the car getting broken into in the garage that I had to pay for, right? A mess. Yes, Grandpa Calvin. I was Grandpa in that concert because first of all, so on the floor they had like it was standing room only. So them kids were doing the mosh. You know, they do the mosh pit and go and just beat each other. I was like, I'm glad we ain't sitting down there because if one of them kids would have hit me, especially with everything happening, nah. Okay. Man, have I ever been to a concert by myself? I usually go by myself. Like, I mean, I got my friends that I go with, but a lot of times I have no problem going. Like, even with Janet, I normally catch Janet twice, and you like anytime she comes, because she always does DC in Baltimore or DC in New York or something. So I'll normally go for myself as the big super fan, so I can get all my fanning out and do all that and have a great time. And then because I enjoyed it so much, I normally buy 2 more tickets for myself and for another friend that I want to experience the same thing. So yeah, I have no problem going by myself. I remember when I saw Shantae Moore in it had to be like 2012 maybe. And it was bad because we just got hit by a really, really, really bad storm that like knocked out power and stuff. So power was out in half the area. This is when I still lived in Alexandria, Virginia. And first of all, none of my friends were really into her music like that at the time. Like Shantae Moore's had a really great resurgence in the last few years, especially with social media. People have an appreciation for her now, but like 2011, 2012, nobody cared. She was at the K2 Lounge, which is like a restaurant kind of venue. And I think maybe this place held 40, 50 people, right? Nobody wanted to go. So I went and saw Shantae by myself. Had a great time. I got to go on stage and dance with her. Got a picture with her. Really great time. So yeah, I have no problem going to a show by myself. But I have so many friends that, I connect with through music. So I like to go with them or my godmom. So yeah, that's always fun. All right, we'll do 2, 3 more, and then I really got to get started because we got so much to cover. Let's see. Calvin, random question. Have you heard of the Northeast maglev strain? Do you think it will actually come? Oh, maybe this is train. Do you think it will connect to DC and New York in 1 hour or less, or connect DC and Baltimore in 15 minutes? Oh, that's a great question. I can definitely see the DC Baltimore 15 minutes thing because that's just down the street. Like when my car was in the shop for all the months, because of course when mine got broken into and I had a Kia, all the parts were backlogged because everybody's Kia and Hyundai were getting broken into. Every time I needed to go run the streets in Baltimore, I was hopping on the Amtrak, and it's just like a 20-minute ride. So I can see that being a thing. I don't know a whole lot about this thing, but I know whenever I go to New York or if I go to Baltimore or Philly, because I don't like driving to, well, I'll drive to Baltimore, but I don't like driving to Philly, New York. I always take that Northeast regional route on Amtrak because it just goes straight up and down from, I think it goes from Boston all the way down somewhere, maybe to Florida or something like that. So I don't know. I got to go back and look into this one, Nan Nelson. I'm not sure about the full that full program. I don't know enough about it. All right, let me do one more. Yes, Alexandria, Virginia. When I first moved back to the DMV after that year of living in Spanaway after college, my first place was in Alexandria, Virginia. Okay. Anyway, let us jump into all of this. I need a good sip of this crap because, man. Okay. So I'll be very transparent. It has been very difficult to watch so many people that I personally know lose their jobs every other day under this foolish administration. It's very draining, especially living in a place like DC. And I talked about this even before Orange Man was reelected. And I said, when you're really talking about, how they would often vilify the federal government or paint everybody out to be the bad guy and corruptionist and all that other crap. And I kept talking about how I was nervous for like the DC metropolitan area's black middle class, right? Because a lot of the economy here is the federal government. Now, there's other industries and stuff out here. There's lots of contracting companies, but even with that, those companies are normally tied to the federal government as well, whether they're defense contracting, whether it's even stuff in tech. A lot of times, a lot of these contracts still come through the government. And so I've had to sit here and witness so many people I personally know get 6 a.m. emails that you're no longer employed, or, they go to work and their badge doesn't work and they don't have a job. And the other thing about it is too, it's not just like younger people, it's people that are in their 50s and 60s that were a few years from retirement, that not only lose a job, but they lose the pension and some of the protections. And I've kind of been hearing just the way that some of these offers that Doge was putting out there were really screwed up. There's an individual who, I'm going to get all these names and terms wrong because I'm not a federal employee, but they did have this program where for people who wanted to retire and get out, you could sign up and get out before Doge came and did the chop, chop, chop and everything. But there was an individual who went and did that. They signed up to say, okay, I'm gonna just go ahead and get out because y'all tripping. Let me just I'm at retirement age. Good. Signs up for it. And then his agency is like, well, actually, we can't approve this because you're essential. We need you until, we can bring in that next person to fill that role, because there's still a hiring freeze right now at the federal government. So as these people are being laid off or fired or gutted, there's nobody coming in to fill in none of these spots, right? And so because of that, he couldn't take the retirement option. And then he finds out yesterday that you've been fired. And that pension, all that crap is gone. And so, now if I was in my suit, right? I see why people be sometimes going and spraying the workplace, right? But this is the reality for a lot of people. And as some people who are from the outside and say, oh, well, maybe people should have took the offer with the 6 months. And it's kind of like, at this point, this administration has never really been transparent or really stuck to their word on a lot of things. I don't think a lot of people wanted to take that kind of gamble. So the federal government, there was an offer where people, if they got out by a certain date, I think it was sometime in February, they would get, they would still lose their job, but they would get paid for the next 6 months. Not sure how accurate that's been or how that's worked for the people who took that offer. There weren't a lot of people who took it. And then the next offer was something about, get out of here now and you can get up to $25,000. They'll pay you. Now, the way that worked was that, again, emphasis on up to 25,000. You weren't getting 25,000. That was the anomaly. So there's a lot of people who took this deal and got upwards of 13 or 14 or 8 or 9. And then it was taxed at a rate of over 40%. So they really got half of that, right? So there's so much going on, and it's not even rooted in anything that they're trying to paint it out to be, because like I said, this has nothing to do with cutting waste and fraud. And it goes back to what I said a few lives ago. This is all about cementing, deregulating, and privatizing for profit. Okay. Because again, if there's all of this fraud that they're claiming that's in the federal government, how come there's not been a single person that's been charged or arrested? Or how come this Doge website hasn't showcased to us where this fraud is and what was fraudulent and what was in it? We're not getting any of that. It's just the same tactics they always use, where they like to paint people to be the bad guy, get everybody emotional and all worked up, and then get them to rally behind whatever nonsense is happening. And I also want to say, because I've seen a lot of people who keep going after the government work and saying, well, they're not doing real work anyway. I think people got to get out of the habit of trying to downplay the value of people's work, because for me, honest work is honest work. If you're going or working somewhere, whether it's your 9 to 5, whether it's something that's remote, whatever it is, if it's honest work and you're not causing harm to anyone and it's bringing you a paycheck so that you can take care of yourself or the people around you, I don't see what the problem is. So as I see all these people who are trying to kind of downplay the work of these people who are losing their jobs, it's kind of like, okay, well, if we're going to do that, are we going to pick and choose which jobs are important now? Because then you guys will be the same. Well, not you guys. When I say you guys, I'm just talking about the naysayers. You guys will be the same ones who will talk about we need to bring manufacturing jobs back to the U.S. And I'm like, okay, so the person standing at the assembly line checking the pill bottle all day for 8 hours, I'm not going to take away from the work that they do. But in the same way that what they do is very important for the infrastructure and the well-being of this country, so is everybody else's job. That's why there's a thing called an economy. Everything, all the pieces work together. Right? So I need people to kind of get out of that. But I just want to go a little bit deeper because, again, when we're talking about this, I don't think people really get what I mean when I say privatizing. There is money to be made in this country from the federal government if you can cancel all of these agencies and privatize all these contracts. And that's pretty much what Elon and crew have been doing. But they, again, will paint the idea that there's all this fraud and corruption. And they will paint it like there's these boogeymen in a back office in the dark room with the lights off like it's the Godfather. And the next thing we will do is take all of this. Like craziness. So let's go back to school again, right? Let's talk about K through 12. We have 49.6 million kids in K through 12 education. Now, when we're talking about public education, again, the average rate for every pupil nationwide is $17,277 per kid every year. Imagine if those were not federally funded and state funded public funds and they were privatized. If every and again, these numbers vary with different states. Okay, like state of Washington, the average rate for a pupil, and again, that's the entire state. That's including the wealthy counties, the counties that don't have as much wealth. It's all that put together. But for Washington State, it's $20,700. For New York State, it's $33,400. But then on the other end of the spectrum, states like Mississippi is $12,000 per student. Places like Idaho, $9,390 per student. But I say all that to say, if every student costs a certain amount of money, and there's 49.6 million of them, and every student is at least almost $10,000 to educate per year, imagine the amount of money that can be made through private companies and privatization, which is why there's been such an attack on education, which is why the Department of Education is practically gone, right? Which is why and it's not even just in this term, there's a reason why Betsy DeVos was put in the Department of Education during Trump's first term. There's a reason why, even during Reagan's term, one of the first things he did was cut a lot of the funding to public education. And then you guys wonder why, like, things like the music programs and all that stuff don't really exist anymore, and why even in the music business, musicality has shifted. All of this stuff has an origin. It all stems from somewhere. And so there's been so many people who decided that the wealth of their friends were more important than the livelihood and the well-being of society. And that's where we've gotten. But I want to go in that. Then we get to Social Security, right? By the way, I'm trying to challenge myself to stop saying right after every sentence. My Dr. Thomas from Howard would kick my behind if I was still in her class. She was my advanced public speaking professor, and she used to do this thing where when you did your speech, you only got 3 dead words to say before you just failed the assignment, right? I just did it. Anyway, you would be doing your speech and your presentation, and anytime she heard a dead word, you just saw her whoosh. So if you said after 3 of them, she'd just be like, sit down. So I got to really get back on to I've fallen so far off the wagon. I'm sorry, Dr. Thomas. Anyway, so Social Security. You got people like Elon and a lot of Republicans claiming Social Security is wearing down the national budget. It's an entitlement. It's a scam. He called it a pyramid scheme, all these other different things. Again, Social Security doesn't even count against the budget. That is, again, money we put into a system. Every time we get a paycheck and you see that Social Security tax come out of your check, that's your money. The government's not paying it. You're paying that. It goes into that big pool, and then as the retirees come out, they get their section of it, and we keep putting into it, so on and so forth. Now, there's $2.8 trillion sitting in that Social Security fund. Imagine if you could take it over and privatize it and have a say in where those funds go and what happens. You pretty much turn Social Security into almost like a Roth IRA account, but privatized. That's the goal. So they continue to, again, paint it to be something that's draining the economy, and it's not. And I really need people to understand that if Social Security is gutted, there's going to be a lot of people who have no way to take care of themselves, especially when we're talking senior citizens. People who, again, because we've also seen the cutting back when we're talking about equal opportunity employment, where it's practically now legal to discriminate against people based on their age. So it's not like, Meemaw, who's 89 and has had 2 knee replacements and has bone on bone, arthritis. She just can't go and get the job at Starbucks and make the cold cream coffee brew and meet the demands of everybody who's coming in during the morning rush and the lunch break or the lunch hour. That's not a real thing. And so people who have worked however many years they've worked and saved, let me put this paper down so I can really get in my pocket here. Again, we've gone down the line of just retirement generationally. Now, millennials, Gen Z, we're going to be in a little different boat because the world has changed since we came into the workforce. But when we're talking about the current baby boomers who are grandparents or great grandparents, great aunts, great uncles, whoever, again, during their tenure, they had their actual employment. With their employment, they had their 401k. They also had their pension and they have Social Security. Those are the things that they live off of once they retire. Again, the pension that's left, their 401k once they pull out of it, and Social Security. Now, we saw once Reagan got into office, a lot of companies got rid of pensions. That no longer became a thing. But I will say pensions are interesting because they've been weaponized politically. One of the reasons why we see the problems with the United States Postal Service as far as them being in debt is because one of the laws that were put into place through Congress during the Bush administration was that the U.S. Postal Service had to make sure that they could account for the pensions of employees for the next 70 years, even employees that aren't even working there yet because they don't exist. And that's the main reason why USPS has been having a deficit these last few years, because they're now burdened to try to carry the weight of a pension of employees that don't exist. Meanwhile, private companies, places like Walmart, can take out insurance policies on employees, and when the employees die, the policy goes to Walmart and not the families of the actual people who just lost a relative. Side note, I just want to throw that in there. But getting back to where I was saying, so as we jump into 2025, there are now a lot of people who have retired who didn't get a pension, or they lost their pension when their companies went up. Think back to that 2008 financial crisis. Think back to when the auto industry crashed and fell apart. Think back to when the airlines fell apart. A lot of people lost their pensions and were not able to get them back. Think about how, for those who have any kind of pension or something correlating with the stock market, how you watch your numbers, especially right now, how you're watching your portfolio just drop every day, right? Imagine you've worked at a factory, or you worked at a mill, or you worked at a plant for 15, 20 years. You've been working there since the 80s. It's now the early 2000s. The economy crashes. Factories close. Factories move and jump ship and go to different countries wherever they go. And because a lot of these businesses were not even honest about their business practices, there is no money for the pension. They have to divide and break the pensions up to pay off other debts and everything else like that, as well as making sure that the execs that leave still are paid nicely. So there's people who lost their pensions after what happened in 2008 and after some of the recessions in the 80s and the early 90s, right? So now, dang it, I said it again. So now we have some people who are retiring with just their 401k and Social Security. There's a lot of people who borrow against their 401k during their lives while they're younger. Things happen. Maybe their children go to college, they didn't have enough for a college fund, so they have to figure out how to take some money out. Maybe something happens with the house. They got to take out a second mortgage and something went wrong. Or there's all these different things where people borrow against their 401k. And when they retire, they haven't been able to replenish everything that was in it. And so there's some people who don't have a lot in the 401k. The only thing left is Social Security. Social Security is not going to be your full paycheck of what you were making. If you were making $100,000 a year, you're not getting a $100,000 salary in your Social Security check every month once you retire. You're getting a fraction of that. And again, your bills haven't changed. The light bill is still going to be just as high. And unfortunately, if your house has not been paid off, you still have all these bills that you have to pay with less money coming in, which is why there are so many people who retire and end up having to take a second job, or end up having to do something else, or having to downsize or sell their house. You see a lot of people who have whole houses and then they move back into an apartment, or they move into kind of, those senior citizen apartment complexes where everything's kind of included. There's all these different things that's happening. That's just the baby boomers. That's their experience. Gen X will have something very different. Millennials, I don't know what we're going to get. Gen Z, good luck. And so, again, the idea of Social Security, they want to privatize it because, again, $2.8 trillion. It's a lot of money. Going back with that, let's go back to USPS, right? United States Postal Service. I don't think people realize just how big the United States Postal Service is. It is the only entity that can get to every address in the United States. And we have 167 million addresses in the United States that need things to be delivered to. And understand, there are 318 million pieces of mail delivered daily. So, again, if you have 318 pieces of mail delivered daily, and that's just United States Postal Service, that does not include UPS and FedEx and what's the other one? DHL or S? What, the people in the yellow van. It doesn't include all of them. So again, 318 parcels a day, or 318 million parcels a day. Every piece of mail costs something, whether it's what you pay. I don't know how much the stamps are these days. I know it's a few cents, like, what is it, like 60 cents or something like that? I don't remember. But every parcel costs something. So when you take into account everybody who has something with a little stamp on it, then the people who are doing next day mail or express or all those things that cost $30 and $40 of mailing packages, there's money to be made. Again, 167 million addresses. So again, we talked about USPS years ago in one of my first lives where I really went down. This was when DeJoy was still there. I know he's getting ready to step down. But we went down the line of just exactly all of the numbers and why they were so pressed to gut USPS and privatize it and do all these different things. Because again, there's money to be made. So when we're talking about, again, deregulating, cementing, and privatizing for profit, this is what we're talking about. So that was the profit portion, right? We just talked about privatizing the profit. We talked about education as far as why they want to chop down Department of Education and privatize public schooling. The whole school choice thing is not about school choice. It's about privatizing everything, getting the money into the hands of those who will be super wealthy. We talked about the vouchers on the last live and how the majority of people who end up getting these vouchers that are paid for by taxpayer money for these private vouchers, the majority of them are wealthy. It's not even working class Americans. It's not even middle class Americans. It's not the random kids in the neighborhood. It's kids who live in, these areas that most of us can't afford to get to. They're from zip codes that are not in our tax bracket. That's the reality. So that's the privatizing for profit section. Then again, when we talk about cementing has been my theme since I started doing lives. I've been saying at least since 2018, the goal is to cement all this nonsense. Once they get everything that they want to make sure that it can't be undone. They want to make sure that things are so locked in to the point where no matter who comes in afterwards, it will take years and decades to undo it. And if that's the case, and with that, there's no guarantee. Let's just be honest. Let's say if we get to have an election, let's say Orange Man is out of there, a Democrat gets into office, Democrats take the House, they take the Senate. There's no guarantee that they're going to hold those points for the next 20 years. There's no guarantee. They may get in, and next thing you know, here comes another one. Look what we just saw in 2020. There's a lot of people who thought once Trump was knocked out that first time, we'll never have to deal with him again, myself included, right? And so, I did it again, dang it. So then we get to 2020, Joe gets in there, okay. And before we even get to about 2023, people start thinking like, ooh, there might be a chance this guy might get back in there. So again, people thought we were in the clear with Orange Man and his nonsense. He got right back in there. And now he's in there, and he's in there with nothing but yes men. So the guardrails are different. So that's what I'm talking about with cementing. And I know some people have seen the story around the SAVE Act, which is one of the pieces of legislation that goes up for a vote. It was supposed to go up for a vote this week, but Speaker Johnson actually pushed the vote back because of some other things taking place. I just want to highlight one portion that has a lot of people nervous about the SAVE Act. All right. Now, the SAVE Act is being pushed as a bill that's going to protect voters and make sure there's no fraud and that illegal people are not voting, right? These rights are kicking my behind, by the way. And again, I've already said, and the numbers are there. There's not a lot of voter fraud to begin with. Most people who are undocumented don't want to be discovered. So the last thing they're going to do is try and register to vote, where there's now an address that can tell people where they live, where there's names, where there's all of everything that can trace somebody who was trying to lay low from ICE or wherever. They're not going to go and sign up to register to vote, especially not for any candidate. But the narrative has been pushed out there, at least since about 2016, that, there's all these people illegally voting. When Trump lost the popular vote in 2016, and, I think it was by about 2.5 to 3 million people, what was his response? There were 3 million illegal votes in California. And it was all the people that came. They were coming from across the border to come vote for Hillary. Be for real. Okay. Anyway, So that's one of the things that's being pushed with the SAVE Act. But there's a segment in there that actually affects a lot of people who are actually citizens. So the SAVE Act would require a passport, a birth certificate, or naturalization papers to register to vote in federal elections, which is a vote suppression measure that could block millions of eligible Americans from voting. Just over half of Americans actually have a U.S. passport. To the extent that the act allows birth certificates or other documents to vote, we've run studies with the University of Maryland, and other data analysts found that more than 9% of voting age citizens, that's 21.3 million American citizens, don't have a passport, a birth certificate, or naturalization papers readily available. Think of all of y'all whose birth certificate is at your mama's house in the trunk, or in between the mattress, or in the nightstand. Mama lives in Myrtle Beach, you live in Sacramento. Okay? Now here's the other portion. 79% of married women change their names. So the current names are not going to match the names on the birth certificates. So to the extent that a passport or a birth certificate is required to register to vote, it's going to be especially hard for married women. So what you're starting to see is politicians and crooks and lobbyists, the ones who are on the wrong side of history, are doing everything in their power to lock into every loophole that they can find to screw people over. One of the things that has a lot of people on the GOP side fearful is the women vote. Now, we know how white women vote. They have not been, I take that back. They've been consistently inconsistent when it comes to what happens, right? Every single time we know what they do. However, within that demographic of the white women vote, there's a shift when we talk about the demographic of white women with college education. They are on the other end of the spectrum where they actually tend to vote against Republican policies all the time. And so with that, if you can get policy, and that's just white women. Now, when we know where black women stand on everything, we know what the 90% is up to, or 92% is up to. So, and even in the Latino community, about 60% of Latino women tend to vote against Republican policy. So again, if I ain't part of this nonsense. If they can set it up where everything has to match, and if your current name, because you've been married and you've changed your last name, does not match the name on your birth certificate, and it creates a space where you're not eligible to vote because you're no longer, nothing is applicable to you when it comes to being eligible to vote because you no longer fit the requirements. That shifts the narrative, and that shifts the demographic of how these elections will start to look. It will start to, again, cement a permanent structure and a permanent almost class structure when it comes to the demographic of voters. It will pretty much be set up for white men to run everything. They'll be the ones calling the shots. Again, and so that's just that portion. Now, that's just with that. Again, when we're talking cementing, even the idea of watching Trump put all of these non-experts in expert positions. Why is RFK over HHS, Human Health Services? Now, he has his credentials, but his credentials are in law. His credentials are not in healthcare. This man is literally a conspiracy theorist. And now you have somebody like him in charge of all of the agencies that make sure that we don't die, right? And so, again, we've watched the CDC get gutted, which is really not the best time. We are still prone for another epidemic and pandemic in the future. These things don't disappear. And with the changes within the world and the fact that we're in a space where we're more connected because of advancements with travel and technology. And as climate change kicks in and you're starting to see a lot of viruses mutate and all these different things take place, this is the worst time to start cutting back on all these different things. But again, you got RFK over HHS. And with that, we've watched a bunch of programs just get gutted. They canceled trial research for cancer at the NIH. They've canceled research on Parkinson's disease. They've canceled research on lupus, sickle cell. They canceled things with HIV. This also includes the different programs. We already kind of talked about what's happening with STIs and the PrEP program and DoxyPrep and all those different things. All of that's right now, things like DoxyPrep. Actually, yeah, I think DoxyPrep and the different preps. Those are, let me backtrack. I'm talking too fast. Like we said before, DoxyPrep, that's something people can take after they've engaged in sexual activity and they think they may have been exposed to something like chlamydia or syphilis. They can take DoxyPrep within 72 hours, maybe 48 or 72 hours, one or two, and it will pretty much fight and prevent that virus from spreading and becoming a thing. Then you have PrEP. That's what people take beforehand. Men and women can take it. It's either you can get it as a shot that you take, I think, either 4 times a year or twice a year, or you can take the pill. You can take the pill every day. This prevents HIV from spreading. It prevents you from spreading it to somebody or somebody spreading it to you, and it has a 99% accuracy rate or an efficiency rate. Right now, most of those programs are free because of the Affordable Care Act. But as we know, we've seen many attempts to continue to gut and chop and get rid of the Affordable Care Act. And we've also seen the cuts and the changes taking place at all these different federal agencies that ensure that these programs are there to protect people. And now the staff and the people that work at these agencies are being gutted and cut. We just saw, 10,000 people get fired yesterday? And these are the people that were either working at the NIH, that were working at the CDC, the FDA, and a few other places. And you have entire departments and divisions that were just gutted, closed. It wasn't like it was like, okay, you know how Walmart used to cut corners? Well, they still do. You know how you go to Walmart, especially if we're talking like the early 2000s before the self-checkout kiosks, and it'll be this big giant store. They have 30 registers, 1 million people in the store buying everything, and then there's 3 registers open. It was because Walmart wanted to cut back. They didn't feel like having every register filled with employees because that means they got to pay out more. So they start chopping down and they say, we're only going to open these 4 registers. And then on top of that, the employees can't even get 40 hours per week because then that means they'd have to qualify for health care and benefits. So if we keep them down at 39, we can keep screwing them over and just make them work. And so Walmart looks at it like, yeah, we have less people, but things are still being done. People can still purchase their items. It might not be at the pace that they wanted. You might be in the line for a good minute, but don't worry. We got a good playlist playing. It's playing Celine Dion, so the people will be just fine. That's the Walmart model. Now, what we're seeing with some of these government agencies that are just getting shut down and chopped, it's almost like Walmart would just close all the registers. They just lock the people in the store. Ain't no registers. There's no way to purchase everything, but we'll figure out how to take your money. But we don't feel like having anybody at the registers. That's what's happening with the federal government right now. There's nobody at the registers. Crazy. And so that's kind of what's happening with the idea of cementing. And this is why I was saying, if you're looking at the Trump cabinet, we have 13 billionaires right now in charge of somebody's agency. And the majority of them have no expertise in the field that they work in, right? Even the idea of, I said it again, damn. Once you start paying attention how many times you say right, you're like, dang, I said a lot. So even Patel being put over the FBI, make it make sense. Conspiracy theorist, he doesn't even want the Secret Service or anybody detailing him. He wants UFC fighters to be his security detail. Nonsense. So again, the idea of cementing and locking things in where it will be harder to undo the foolery once it's in there. That's the main thing. I want to pause for 1 second because this deregulation portion is going to be a longer story. So let me take a sip and read some comments. And then we'll go from there. Okay. Somebody said, you do not treat people like that, just pure evil. Again, like I said, it's nonsense. And that's the part that makes it so vile. It's just so cold. And people have tried to be a little smart, Alex, in my comments. Like, well, Clinton cut the government down when he was in there. I was like, yes, he certainly did cut down the federal government positions. But it was something that was laid out over a specific period of time, over a certain amount of years. And one of the things that's always happened with the federal government, thank God my mom used to work for the government. I got all the scoop from her. What they often did as these agencies were either sunsetting or closing, the federal government had a responsibility to find employees employment elsewhere in another agency. Sometimes that meant they might offer them a position in another city, do whatever. There were options. There was no, we just show up, all y'all are fired, get out. That wasn't a thing. It was, hey, this is the plan for 1998. We're telling you this now in 1993, and in 5 years, this agency will no longer be here. That agency will no longer be here. Some of these agencies are going to consolidate. Some are going to merge together. Some stuff, new responsibilities will be assigned to this group or that group. And some of these things are no longer relevant to the current times that we're living in. And so here's this 5-year plan to get rid of all of this. 5 years is enough time for people to adjust. It's enough time for people to find new options. The idea of trying to run the federal government like a private business, especially when, again, the federal government is in a position of service. This is not about profit, and it's not about the idea of trying to like meet a bottom line because we're in competition. These are services that benefit all of us in various spaces, whether it's what's happening with education. Imagine being a parent right now of somebody that's special needs. Charter schools don't have to take special needs students. Private schools don't have to take special needs students. Schools that are not public do not have to take a special needs student. As a matter of fact, a lot of these schools that are private or chartered or whatever else they have going, a lot of times if a student is underperforming, they will kick the student out of the school because they don't want to mess up their stats and their numbers when they sell themselves to bidders and buyers who would like to purchase into their school, because they want to say, hey, 100% of our students all graduated. They don't want to have Becky Sue, who couldn't read too well. She might have had dyslexia or something, and they don't want Becky Sue messing up the numbers. So Becky Sue got to go. We sorry. We'll take your money, but you still getting out of here. And as a matter of fact, even though we kicked you out because you signed that contract for the year, you still owe us everything for the full year. You don't get anything back. That's the reality of what it is. So it's cruel. Okay. Let me do a few more here. Less likely said, I'm going to be the first one on the chopping block when they hit me. I'm on Social Security disability and I'm 50 years old. If you see me out there with a sign, or if you see me out there with a will work for food sign. See, it's like, this is people's reality. And the sad part is there's no, y'all know I'm a very empathetic person. The gift that I got from working with children was that I learned empathy. And it is it's not baffling, because I've already said, when it comes to white folks collectively, there's no limit to how low they'll go with some of the stuff they get behind. It's just a lot. It's a lot. Make it make sense. Okay. Let me read a few more here. Sorry if I'm missing your comments. We got a lot. I got 10 pages of notes to get through tonight. Somebody said, and on April Fool's Day, they shut down the human services in San Francisco. And imagine that. There's probably people who thought somebody was joking when they said you were fired. And it's like, no, you really got to get out. Like, whoo, make it make sense. It's terrible. Bethany McGowan, I totally agree. They say empathy is a sin now. So they say that's literally what you're seeing happen with politicians. I'm going to get to that senator that had the little smart comment to say earlier too, by the way. Okay, let me go ahead and get to this next segment. Let me take one more sip of this. All right, now let's get to the deregulating portion. I'm going to tie a lot of this together because I need us to see the bigger picture. Here's our paper trail. We're going to introduce you to Lee Zeldin. Lee Zeldin at one point was in politics, was in Congress, Republican, of course, often voted against environmental legislation in Congress. All right? He ran, I want to say he ran for governor of New York, or he ran for something in the state of New York. And he had pledged to reverse the fracking ban in New York. Pretty much, the oil and gas fracking that was taking place. He wanted to reverse the ban on that. The reason why fracking is such a controversial topic is because it's very terrible for the environment. Even when we're looking at a place like Oklahoma, because it's not even just about what happens with our water and everything. For some reason, there is a correlation with seismic activity and fracking. So when we look at a place like Oklahoma, which is not a place you think of with earthquakes, since fracking has become a lot more popular in a place like Oklahoma, they've had a lot of earthquakes, a lot. And so those are just things to think about. So anyway, we got Lee Zeldin. Guess what Lee Zeldin gets put over once Trump is put into office? All right. They put him over the EPA, Environmental Protection Agency. This is where it gets good. So we already know Orange Man had been gutting the Environmental Protection Agency even in his first term. In 2018, he cut 3,200 jobs, right? That was 19% of the workforce at the time. Almost a fifth of the people that worked at the EPA got let go. In this current era, he's a bit more strategic. The folks that needed to be cut and gutted were already cut and gutted. Now he's focusing in on who he wants to yank. This time, the 300 that were just let go, these are all of the scientists, the environmental scientists, and these are the regulatory enforcement officials that have been let go. Now, we get a little bit deeper. This is as of March 12th. Let me pull that on up here. Dun, dun, dun. All right, here we go. EPA launches, because again, you just put Lee Zeldin in charge of the EPA, somebody who pretty much was 100% against what the EPA's actual mission is. You put all these people to head these agencies that actually are trying to destroy them. Here we go. This is again March 12th of this year. EPA launches biggest deregulatory action in U.S. history. Administrator Zeldin announces 31 historic actions to power the Great American Comeback. Again, business, business, business. Here's some of the things that we're going to be undoing, right? Reconsideration of regulations on power plants. That's Clean Power Plan 2.0. Getting rid of that. Reconsideration of regulations throttling the oil and gas industry. Getting rid of that. Reconsideration of mercury and air toxics, reconsideration of mercury and air toxic standard that improperly targeted coal-fired power plants. Getting rid of that. Reconsideration of mandatory greenhouse gas reporting program that imposed significant costs on American energy supply. Getting rid of that. Reconsideration on limitations, guidelines, and standards, ELG, for the steam electric power generating industry to ensure low-cost electricity while protecting water resources. Getting rid of that. Reconsideration of wastewater regulations for oil and gas development to help unleash American energy. Getting rid of that. Reconsideration of the Biden-Harris administration risk management program rule that made America's oil and natural gas refineries and chemical facilities less safe. All right, next thing. This falls under the category of lowering the cost for American families. They're going to reconsider and undo all of this. Reconsideration of light-duty, medium-duty, and heavy-duty vehicle regulations that provided the foundation for the Biden-Harris electric vehicle mandate. Get rid of that. Reconsideration of the 2009 endangerment finding and regulations and actions that rely on findings. I don't know what that means, but whatever it is, they're getting rid of that. Reconsideration of technology transition rule that forces companies to use certain technologies that increase costs on food at grocery stores and semiconductor manufacturing. Reconsideration of particulate matter national ambient air quality standards that shut down opportunities for manufacturing businesses. Now, their wording is to make it seem like these regulations are cutting funding. So you notice every time they highlight or talk about whatever they're cutting, they somehow try to tie it to business. You just keep focused on that part. Restructuring the regional HAZE program that threatened the supply of affordable energy for American families. Overhauling the Biden-Harris administration's social cost of carbon program. Redirecting enforcement resources to the EPA's core mission to relieve the economy of unnecessary bureaucratic burdens that drive up costs for American consumers. Enforcement discretion. Terminating Biden's environmental justice and DEI arms of the agency. You knew that part was going. The next portion falls under advancing corporate federalism portion. Ending the so-called Good Neighbor Plan, which the Biden-Harris administration used to expand federal rules to more states and sectors beyond the program's traditional focus and led to the rejection of nearly all state implementation plans. Next thing, working with states and tribes to resolve massive backlogs with state implementation plans and tribal implementation plans that the Harris administration refused to resolve. What they're trying to talk around is the fact that a lot of the federal lands and the Native American space that is designated, there's not the same zoning laws. And so what they want to do is pretty much create it where you can put more terrible factories in spaces where people live. That's really what that's about, as well as utilizing federal land for some of these different programs. That's what that actually would be. Reconstituting Science Advisory Board and Clean Air Scientific Advisory Committee, meaning they're getting rid of that. Prioritizing coal ash program to expedite state permit reviews and update coal ash regulations. What's annoying with that is the research has already shown the issues that we run into with coal. Remember how I said there's no such thing as clean coal when they kept saying, yeah, you just got to have clean coal. There's no such thing as clean coal. It's coal. Same toxins are still going to come out into the air. The people still working in those mines are going to get black lung. There's no such thing as clean coal. It was just a political term to try to utilize and water down the harmful effects of what happens when you have coal mining and everything else, especially burning it as well. Utilizing enforcement discretion to further North Carolina's recovery from Hurricane Helene. So they got some nonsense going. So that's that portion. Okay, so that's just that. Now, we're going to keep this going. Again, we just talked about Zeldin. This is the guy who wanted to be in office at one point. He's totally been 100% against anything in regard to environmental protections, climate change, so on and so forth. He don't want to hear none of that crap. They put him over the EPA. The first thing he does is start gutting and they get rid of the scientists that are there, the people that are the regulatory enforcement officials. And again, now they introduce new programs that are going to pretty much undo a lot of the safety regulations that make sure that the air that we breathe is not toxic, or the water that we drink doesn't have toxins in it, or even the water we drink or utilize doesn't have sewage in it, so on and so forth. And this also includes changing zoning laws to allow for there to be factories in different locations that are closer to residential areas. Now, this is where it gets even deeper. And also shout out to, I saw her TikTok and they made me go and research the topic. Black Belt Babe, that was her name on TikTok. She brought the attention to this. Memphis, Tennessee. One of the things Elon Musk has been doing has been working on or constructing what you call a supercomputer complex. This would be an entire facility that spans the space of multiple football fields, and would utilize over 150 megawatts of electricity. Now, just to give some context here, 1 megawatt can power 500 to 1,000 homes for an entire year, just one. So this facility that he's building would utilize 150 megawatts. So that's upwards of 100 to 150,000 homes that could be powered for a full year. That's how much energy this one plant is going to be utilizing. In addition to that, it's going to be taking upwards of 1 million gallons of water per day. Now, this is where it gets interesting. It's going to create a lot of pollution because it's going to be something that utilizes 15 gas turbines or gas-powered turbines. So you have to think of all the toxins that are going to float and fly in the air while all of this is happening. One of the things about Memphis is Memphis also kind of has a sketchy atmosphere when it comes to air quality. And it's mainly because, again, Memphis also sits in that Mississippi, that corridor. So Memphis is the 5th busiest port in the United States. So when you're thinking of all those ships that are coming in and bringing in cargo, you have to think about what happens when these ships sit and unload. It takes sometimes days to unload all those crates and everything. So all the toxins and the fumes and all, they just sitting there, just going into the set. They're meeting up with the robins and the cardinals and the blue jays, right? And so what that has led to, as far as some of the pollution, and again, there's also the conversation of just humidity and different things that happen. Air quality shifts throughout the year. So right now, their air quality is not really too bad because it's not super, super humid yet. A bunch of different things happening, but air quality shifts throughout the year, no matter where you are. Think about when you had all those wildfires in Canada the other year, and then people in Philly, Baltimore, DC, New York, we got all that ash. And remember the air quality level. Sometimes when you look on your phone and it shows that air quality number, it might have been 101. It was like, stay in the house. Do not go outside. Or when California or the West Coast or parts of the Midwest have their wildfires and the smoke blows over to the eastern portion. Like all that stuff changes throughout the year. But what has happened in a place like Memphis, because of, again, some of the issues with air quality, you have 22,000 kids in Memphis that have asthma. You have 68,000 adults in Memphis who have asthma. And then you still have 72,000 adults who have chronic obstruction pulmonary disease, which makes them at greater risk for other issues when the air is bad. A prime example of that would be like when my father was still living. And again, he has scleroderma, and so it was something that affected his lungs. If there was a wildfire, this is especially for Washington State, if there was a wildfire in the area and that smoke was going on, he couldn't be outside because it technically would pretty much finish him off, right? He couldn't be in spaces where the air was a lot. He had to even be careful sometimes doing yard work and stuff. If he had a lawnmower or the truck or something, he couldn't be around all that exhaust because his lungs were really sensitive at that point. Because at that point, in his last 2 years of life, his lungs worked at maybe a capacity of maybe 20%. He got winded at everything. He walk up the stairs, he got to sit down and take a break. If we would go fishing as a kid, he would be the person who would hook the boat to the truck, launch it into the lake, and pull the truck back, and then we get in and go. As I became an adult, I had to be the person to do it because he physically couldn't do it anymore. So that's just an example of people's situation. Now, this is where we get deeper. Stay with me. We're still talking about Lee Zeldin. Now, where do you think they're building this factory? Because we know it's not going to be in the wealthy estates of the upper echelons of society and the old money residents of Memphis. Of course not. It's going to be in Boxtown, Southwest Memphis, an area that is, according to the 2020 census, and again, they don't even have the most accurate number because, again, the 2020 census was cut short, but 96.5 to 99% of the residents of Boxtown, Memphis are Black. Also working class, where the median income is $30,103. In addition to the fact that they're going to build this factory that's going to put all these pollutants in the air in the Black side of town, per usual, that area is also still battling the fight with the, I think it's called the Byhalia. I might be saying it wrong. Correct me for those in Memphis. The Byhalia connection pipeline that they're also trying to construct. So not only is the air about to get jacked up, but the water and the soil around the pipeline got to get messed up too. Because again, they say, well, just do it in the Black neighborhoods. Those people will be fine. And so it gets deeper than that because we're still not done. So then, again, with the EPA and the laws and rules they've changed, the gutting of regulation at the EPA has allowed for something like this to now take place as far as this supercomputer complex that's being built. And with the EPA and all federal agencies, there have been new additional things that have been added, where in all policy, paperwork, documents, there are terms that are no longer allowed to be used. Now, do y'all want me to read every single term, or do you want me to just read the ones in relation to the environment? Y'all put it in the chat right now while I'm looking. We want to read every single term because it is a lot of them, or do we want to just stick to the environment? Somebody in the chat tell me right now while I'm looking. Well, y'all ain't giving me no. Okay, said environment. Well, someone say all term. Okay, just the environment. Fine, we'll do that. All right. The terms that are no longer allowed to be used on any of these federal documents, any policy, anything like that. Actually, you know what? I'm sorry. We got to stop being surface level. We just got to face it as it is. It's not that many terms. It's like 70 terms. We'll get through it. Okay, here's all the terms no federal agency can use in any policy, in anything that's being pushed into law or being enforced. Accessible, activism, activist, advocacy, advocate, advocates, affirming care, all-inclusive, allyship, anti-racism, anti-racist, assigned at birth, assigned female at birth, assigned male at birth, at risk, barrier, barriers, belong, bias, biased, bias towards, biases, biases towards, biologically female, biologically male, Black, Indigenous, people of color, Black, breastfeed plus people, breastfeed plus person, chest feed plus people, chest feed plus person, clean energy, climate crisis, climate science, commercial sex worker, inclusive, inclusive leadership, inclusiveness, inclusivity, increase the diversity, indigenous community, inequalities, inequality, inequitable, inequities, inequity, injustice, institutional, intersectional, intersectionality, key groups, key people, key populations, Latinx, LGBT, LGBTQ, marginalized, marginalized, men who have sex with men, mental health, minorities, minority, most risk, MSM, multicultural, MX, Native American, non-binary, community equity, confirmation bias, cultural competence, cultural differences, cultural heritage, cultural sensitivity, culturally appropriate, culturally responsive, DEI, DEIA, DEIAB, DEIJ, disabilities, disability, discriminated, discrimination, discriminatory, disparity, diverse, diverse backgrounds, diverse communities, diverse community, diverse group, diverse groups, diversify, diversify, diversifying, diversity, enhance the diversity, enhancing the diversity, environmental quality, equal opportunity, equality, equitable, equitableness, equity, oppression, oppressive, orientation, people plus uterus, people plus or people minus centered care, people-centered care, polarization, political, pollution, pregnant people, pregnant person, pregnant persons, prejudice, privilege, privileges, promote diversity, promoting diversity, pronouns, prostitute, race and ethnicity, racial diversity, racial identity, racial inequality, racial justice, racially, racism, segregation, sense of belonging, sex, sexual preferences, sexuality, social justice, equity, ethnicity, excluded, exclusion, expression, females, feminism, fostering inclusivity, GBV, gender-based violence, gender diversity, gender identity, gender ideology, gender affirming care, genders, Gulf of Mexico, hate speech, health disparity, health equity, Hispanic minority, historically, identity, immigrants, implicit bias, implicit biases, inclusion, social justice, sociocultural, socioeconomic, status, stereotypes, systemically, they, them, transgender, transsexual, trauma, traumatic, tribal, unconscious bias, underappreciated, underprivileged, underrepresentation, underrepresented, underserved, undervalued, victims, vulnerable populations, women, and the underrepresented. So again, every federal agency, anything that is federally funded, receiving federal dollars, none of those terms can be in any of their legislation, any of their policy, any of their bylaws, any of their documents. To the point where people who work at these agencies, if they work in the tech side, had to go and strip all these terms from these websites. So if you go and you look at some of these websites, like the Environmental Protection Agency or any of these places, you won't find any more language about environmental racism. You won't find conversations about equity if we're looking at the Department of Education. All of that has been stripped and gutted and cut down. And what's crazy is, remember how I said, especially when we were having the conversations about reparations, and I always used to say that because you just can no longer make an argument about race, you have to have that conversation of lineage, and you have to utilize terms like disenfranchised, end result, systemic. All of those words in there. So even conversations about reparations and different things, people have to literally almost split hairs to have a dialogue and create a conversation where they won't get flagged or deemed, irreputable for any kind of conversation. So there's that portion. And so again, you got all that going on. Now that was just one example. So we literally just tied you know, I don't forgot the man's name already. What's that fool's name? Too many thoughts in here. What did I write down? Oh, Lee Zeldin. Okay. So again, we went from Lee Zeldin being appointed into a position for an agency that he has no interest in protecting. He actually wants to gut at the hands of the current administration. That administration gives them the okay to do whatever they need to do. You gut the EPA, you get rid of the scientists, you get rid of the regulators. This now changes up the rules where somebody like Elon can now step in, get his factory going, and not have to worry about rules and regulations coming from the EPA that are going to say the toxins coming out of this factory are endangering the lives of these 96% of Black folks and everybody else that live in this area. Because again, that also means zoning laws can change. A lot of places have zoning laws where you can't have a factory next to a school. You can't have, certain things next to residential areas. Changing zoning laws gets rid of that. Not to go after Houston or anything, but Houston is a city that has very interesting zoning laws where if you've ever been to Houston, you'll see a factory, a church, a bakery, and a restaurant on the same block, depending on what ward you're in. So that's kind of one of the things that takes place. And so with all that, it gets crazy because, again, it's centered around money. And the most jacked up part in all of this is that the entire factory complex deal was all done behind closed doors. Most of the city officials in Memphis didn't even know about this program until it was already being implemented, until contracts were already signed with 9 utility companies in the city of Memphis when we're talking water, electric, gas. Because again, the utility companies are going to have to be the people to give these big giant factories water, gas, electricity, so on and so forth. Stuff is locked in and loaded, ready to go. And so now it's not like the city can just come in and say, nope, shut it down. Because now this needs to go through the court system. Now, what have we seen happen with our court systems? We've seen all of the shenanigans where, again, you got Orange Man. He's going to put in as many people into judicial positions as he can, specifically on the appellate side. That's been Trump's thing. When we're talking about his first term, he put in a lot of judges, but he put a lot of judges in the appeals courts because the idea is, you have the federal judges who are going to block different things. Say I'm president and I decide that college is free. No ifs, ands, but it's free for everybody. A federal judge is going to say, somebody just has to bring a suit. Somebody like Edward Bloom would probably sue right away, right? And so Edward Bloom sues. Federal judge says, nope, can't do that. You don't have jurisdiction to do so. So now, federal judge already shut me down. Now I'm going to the appellate court. Appellate court has a chance to say, we're going to stick with what that federal judge said, and yeah, you can't do that. Or they're going to say, actually, you can do that. That's fine. At that point, either party has the choice, or both parties have the choice. They can accept what the appellate court has said, or they can push for the next level. So if we're talking at the state level, then it goes to, well, I'm talking federal, so it would just go to the Supreme Court. But let's say I was governor. It would have went to the state Supreme Court. And then if it still had to go somewhere else, it could get to the larger Supreme Court. Like, there's layers to this. But we know that one of the big plans was tackling the judicial system. And what have we been seeing happen as well? Trump is even going after law firms. We have law firms that are now caving to the Trump administration because they're afraid of losing federal contracts. Because again, these law firms that have these $2 and $3 and $4 and $600 million budgets, segments of that wealth come from the contracts that they have with the federal government. And so we're now watching law firms saying, hey, I'm going to give upwards of $100 million in pro bono services to whatever it is you want to fight for. Hey, we're going to go ahead and represent you in this nonsense that you have going because we don't want you messing up our money. So now you're watching the shenanigans creep into our judicial system, not just with the judges, because again, he put in some of his corrupt people in these judge seats, and we know where the Supreme Court is. You can't depend on Clarence Thomas for nothing, or some of these other ones that are in there. But again, now you're going after the law firms to the point where you have law firms, they don't even want to take certain cases because they don't want to be caught up in the mix. We're also seeing what's happening even when we're talking in academic institutions. Universities are now being under attack. The craziest thing I saw was what happened with the state of Maine, where President Trump was like, I don't like how the governor of Maine talked about me the other day, so I'm going to pull funding from this university that the state has, and unless I get a public and personal apology, I'm not reinstating the funds. We're not living in normal times. None of this shit is normal. This is just all wild, right? And so it's crazy. So going back to Elon and all this other stuff. So again, going from Zeldin all the way to this factory in Memphis that's giving all these Black people all these toxins in the air. And mind you, this factory is not going to bring jobs because a lot of times they will use the leverage in the conversation and say, this is going to bring jobs to people. This is no, right? There's only 37 slots open for a position at this factory because everything's going to be automated. Now, they claimed it was going to bring 300 jobs. There still wouldn't be a lot for as much space as this place was going to take. 37 jobs. The rest will be automated. The rest will be AI. Which also means that if everything's automated and also AI, there's also going to be a chance for all kind of mishaps to take place. A chance for leaks and glitches and things where stuff ends up in the atmosphere or something freezes and the chimneys that shoot out all toxins can't close temporarily or filter. It's going to be some nonsense. But then it's crazy because they'll do all that, but then want to talk about fraud in the federal government, which is crazy to me. Makes no sense. And speaking of this fraud, before I take a break, I want to clear something up. With all of these Doge savings that they're patrolling around, understand this is not money that's coming to us as people. It's not like there's this magical pot of, hey, Elon and Doge fired 222,000 federal employees. That's the actual number right now and counting. 222,000 federal employees. And so all of that money is going to go to us and it's going to go into a magical special America savings account. It's not. All of that money goes back to the agency because that money was already line item for the agency when Congress voted on the budget. The reason why we have shutdowns or sequesters and all these different things is all of the money that funds the federal government is already lined item. The money that's being spent right now is money that was agreed upon in 2024. It has nothing to do with going and firing 10,000 people and now there's $20 million that we can go put into public school. It doesn't work like that because even once that money that goes back to the agency is allotted after you've done layoffs and cut downs, the agency doesn't just get to spend and do what they want with it. Now Congress has to vote on what happens with that remaining money. And so the goal of Doge was to somehow save $2 trillion. They're nowhere near that number. When you do the checks and balances and cancel out the pluses and the minuses and the negatives and the positives, $4 billion has allegedly been saved. $4 billion. $4 billion is a long way from $2 trillion. And so you fired 222,000 people to save $4 billion. $4 billion that was voted on by Congress to spend. Make it make sense. All right, let's read some comments here. Whew, Lord, help me to hold out. Thank you, Jasmine Jones. This, along with them snatching up activists, I forgot all about that. Thank you for reminding me. Snatching up activists and denying them due process is being done to force silence and compliance in the system. That's exactly what this is about. Going after the law firms, going after the academic institutions, instilling fear in everybody where it's get in line with what we're doing or else. Even with these deportations, the fact that they done went and snatched up all these people who are actual citizens and then shipped them off somewhere and can't get some of them back, because they don't even have the jurisdiction to tell another country, hey, I know we took some people and dropped them off over there, but y'all got to provide a plane and bring them back. The countries are like, we don't have to do anything. Y'all figure it out. Right? Now you don't even know how to find some of these people. People that were everyday citizens getting snatched up because they fit the description. And now you have college students and people who are still actively protesting in relation to everything happening with Palestine. And you're watching people either lose their visas and all, and you have to go back to whatever country they're from. All of this, again, this was all in that Project 2025 that I set and every other content creator that had some common sense set and talked about and warned about. And everybody told us we were fear-mongering or we were gassing and sicing things up. Yeah, y'all, he ain't gonna do that. Even some of these celebrities, even Nelly, when he was getting cussed out for performing at the inauguration, he said, I need to see this racism. I'd like to see it. Well, Nelly, here we are. Take your pick. Okay, this is like Vanna White Wheel of Fortune. It's just like, pick something on the board. Pick a letter. Because we got something for every day of the week. Make it make sense. All right. Said we got Calvin. Oh, I cussed? Oh, I didn't know I cussed. My bad, y'all. Sorry. All right. And so somebody said, where am I at? I just saw Piscean Beauty said the banned words list is sort of rumor mill, overzealous agencies, overinterpreting EOs, not a formal list from the White House. to that point, what all the agencies have done is they went ahead and taken those words out anyway, because pretty much anything that's going to fall under the line of what the White House is going to eventually come after, pretty much the agencies, nobody wants attention on them. Nobody wants to be seen. Everybody's trying to lay low. They do not want smoke from the White House. So not only are they compliant with what's there, again, your conversation of overzealous, yeah, they're going to go above and beyond to make sure they don't bring smoke to themselves. Even with people in their government emails, that they instructed people, take out the they them out of your signatures, get rid of that. There's all kind of stuff going on at all these agencies. It's a point where even though I know a lot of these agencies are pissed off of what's happening, they still need the funding to operate. This is still people's livelihood and their jobs. And so as much as people want to resist and kick back and fight and do everything else, they're at the mercy of the stroke of a pen right now. And so, yeah, there's going to be agencies that are going to be overzealous. But pretty much all of those terms, like if you're looking at a lot of these websites, a lot of whole pages have been taken down, right? And at this point, whatever's not on the list will be on there anyway. It's the same. It's the same way that we saw the CRT boogeyman, and how as soon as the smoke signal went off, all of the legislative officials who were on the wrong side of history decided to hop on it. You had Governor Youngkin in Virginia who decided, okay, CRT, I'm going to make a CRT hotline, and parents can call, and if they suspect their child is being taught CRT, they can call this hotline, and we'll take care of it, and we'll pull funding from that school district. It's just folks getting in line. This is how we ended up, and that led to the book bannings, and then next thing you know, librarians were being threatened with carrying certain books where they can be arrested if certain books were in their libraries, depending on what state you're in. So it all ties together. If they haven't got to it yet, they will get to it. That's how I'm looking at all this. Because it's almost like sometimes folks will be like, oh, it's not that bad. My question is always like, but it's still bad, right? Bad, right? I mean, how bad do you want it to get? What happens when it gets to that bad? Because lately what's been happening is when things get to that bad, people just push the threshold to say, well, it could be worse. Then it gets worse, and some folks be like, well, it's not the end of the world. I'm like, well, damn, what else you want to happen? Some of y'all are waiting for the asteroid for real. Okay, that's not towards you, Pisces. That just went on my rant. Okay, let's see. Thank you, Jasmine Jones. Elon is a snake. He's intentionally framing these cuts as fraud to get people to agree with shredding the very programs that benefit them. Meanwhile, he continues to get money daily, which is exactly why, if you're looking at the EPA, this big giant factory that's happening would have never been able to get through the EPA as far as regulation, or they would have had to restructure how that factory is going to be run. Now there's no regulation with what kind of toxins and stuff can go in the air or what's going to affect the water. And again, utilizing 1 million gallons of water a day per day. Again, you realize the residents in this area have to still share resources with this giant computing, whatever this place is going to be. It's a mess. Make it sense. Make it make sense. All right. Somebody said Walmart is trash. Somebody said politics is unpredictable. Very. Nikita Clark said, and everyone will be fired from this Department of Vital Records. Isaiah, you on it. AI is coming and need people to be equipped. That's one of the other things, which is AI is going to be a problem, y'all. And it's, yes, it can be a tool to help things, but there's going to be a lot of jobs that are lost under AI. And so this is why my advice to folks is kind of be 10 steps ahead. Since AI is already here and you can't get rid of it, you're going to have to learn, or not learn, but folks are going to have to kind of maneuver with AI in mind when they're doing certain things, whether you learning how to utilize it for your advantage, or it's something that gets on my nerves so much, especially in the conversation of music. I had to give Timbaland a strong side eye with his statements. I'll get back to that later. But yeah, it's a lot going on. Let's see. Dre, oops, I think I said your name right. Dreif said, from what I was told today, CDC staff helping run the rape prevention education grant were fired. That sounds about right. Yes, I have read. That's a great book. Aurora Alheen. Calvin, have you read White Fragility? That's a great one. I suggest reading that book and read Dying of Whiteness is a great one, because it's pretty much what we're sitting through right now. We are collateral to the decisions of white folks collectively right now, unfortunately. Yeah. Let's see here. Somebody said I'm ready for him to be impeached like now. They don't have the votes yet. It's not going to happen anytime soon, unfortunately. We got better luck at him just dying of old age. Either that or, come on, get back in focus. Or, if you can read my, that's the only other thing I can think of. All right. You can't say, yeah, we're going to have to educate ourselves further to compete with AI. Like pretty much and that's always just been a thing in general. As the world changes, as technology changes, as things advance, whether for good or for bad, society has to always be able to adjust and be 10 steps ahead, or you become collateral. So if I take a place like West Virginia's economy, during their heyday, what made West Virginia very wealthy at one point was coal, right? Coal mining. Times have changed. We no longer are really an industrial country. We shifted more into banking and tech and other services. We're still an agricultural thing, but coal kind of became the only outlet as far as the main business of the state. And so there's a lot of people, unfortunately, who, as these coal mines continue to close, there's not a lot of other options out there for some people, especially if they didn't have a trade or didn't get the luxury to have an education and so on and so forth. And so, unfortunately, that's the way things have just gone, which to me, I think brings a bigger conversation, which, am I there yet? Okay, actually, this is perfect because it can segue into my next topic. So, because I was about to shift right into these tariffs. But let me pause for 1 second before I get to that. Yeah, folks don't have to be able to adjust because it's a lot. Even on the music side, which is annoying. And I'm trying to pitch my stuff to curators and stuff. One of the first questions they ask is like, "Have AI been a part of any of your production?" And as somebody who sits and plays every instrument and sings every note and writes every song, I'm like, AI, what? You piss me off. But yeah, so there's that. But it's crazy, and I really hope people in this era, like I said on the last live, move out of that space of being a surface level thinker when it comes to politics and just how all of this works. How we got here is a lot of people who just had a surface level approach to everything that was happening. It goes back to what I was saying, where I kept saying, and I always say, you keep giving an inch to nonsense, they eventually will run a mile on you. And that's what's happening. They're running a whole marathon right now. And there were so many moments where people either didn't go to the full origin of different conversations or thought processes or things that were being said. They stayed at the surface level. And because it was surface level, it didn't seem that bad. Oh, it is what it is, blah, 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 blah. And so people were either heavily reactionary to things that they didn't have full context and information on, or they made very, very, very foolish assertions with certain things. And so here we are in this era of disinformation and misinformation, trying to make sense of it all. And one of the things that ended up happening too, even with a lot of these billionaires, I was like, is it nobody noticing all of these billionaires before Cuckoo Man got in there the second time? They kept trying to paint themselves as being with us. They always would say, "Oh, free speech is under attack. Free speech is under attack." And I'm like, since when has a billionaire ever had to be limited by, their speech being censored? That's never been a thing. What billionaire do you know has been censored? It certainly isn't Elon. It certainly isn't Bezos. It certainly isn't Zuckerberg. None of their speeches. They're billionaires. Even if somebody told them they can't say something that's racist, they're still billionaires. They're not hurting in life. But they knew if you can paint it to be the us versus them, if they do it to us, they'll do it to you. You can get an entire collective of people who already see a piece of themselves in these billionaires because they see their prosperity as what they aspire to attain and to be and have proximity to. They latch on and jump behind it, which is why somebody like Elon thinks he needs to show up at all these rallies and he thinks that people like him. So there's that. Anyway, getting to the tariffs. When I tell you, I'm glad I used my discernment and bought that car last month. Yeah, I told y'all I was pissed because I didn't want to buy one, but my car was making too many expensive sounds. And so I was like, dang it, let me just get a car now because Trump keep talking about all these tariffs and everything's about to skyrocket. And plus, my car was on its last leg. I think that car had about 18 months of rolling left before it was about to just sputter and give out. And it would have been just my luck. I would have been on the freeway somewhere in the middle of the Carolinas or something. So Thank God I bought that car. All right, let's go over the numbers. Right, Trump for some reason is convinced that these tariffs are going to bring upwards of $600 billion to the U.S. economy, which, by the way, is not a lot of money if we're talking over 10 years. Anyway, so here's the new tariff numbers. All right. For the EU, we're going to give them a 20% tariff on goods. Vietnam, 46%. Taiwan, 32%. Japan, 24%. India, 26%. South Korea, 25%. Thailand, 36%. Switzerland, 31%. I know Switzerland is like, well, now why am I in it? Indonesia, 32%. Malaysia, 24%. Cambodia, 49%. It's almost half. The UK, 10%. South Africa, 30%. Brazil, 10%. Bangladesh, 37%. Singapore, 10%. Israel, 17%. The Philippines, 17%. Chile, 10%. Australia, 10%. Pakistan, 29%. Turkey, 10%. Sri Lanka, 44%. Colombia, 10%. And that doesn't even include what we already got Canada and Mexico paying and so on and so forth. His thought process is that if we put tariffs on all of these goods coming into the U.S. from these different countries, that they're going to pay these tariffs and it's going to bring money to our economy. And it's also going to inspire U.S. corporations to do more business in the United States. Let's clear some things up. For the millionth time, the tariff is not paid by the other country. It's paid by us, right? It's paid by the companies and corporations, which mean the prices are going to skyrocket on a lot of goods that we use that are coming from all these places. And as far as the conversation of, well, this is going to bring jobs to U.S., blah, 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 this is always painted from the standpoint of manufacturing. It's painted from the standpoint of it's still the 1970s and everybody's on the assembly line and manufacturing jobs are coming back. We are never going to see manufacturing jobs in the way that we once saw them in the 60s and the 70s. That's done, mainly because of advancements in technology, because of automation, because of also now AI, and because some of these companies understand that even if they bring these different tariffs and so on and so forth, they will still make more money having jobs overseas than bringing them back to the U.S. and having to pay people a fair wage, because it's just a lot easier to go to another country where the value of their dollar is a fraction of what ours is, lowball these people that work these unbearable shifts, and there's all kind of just in the United States would be a breaking of all kind of labor laws. But these corporations and companies know that they can make a bunch of money. The tariffs are not going to do anything to bring revenue to the United States. It's just going to make the goods skyrocket. The price of cars are going to go up 25%. There's going to be some things that prices nearly double. And who does that fall on? It's going to fall on us. The only people who won't be heavily affected by these tariffs are the super wealthy, which is why they don't care. Now, Trump, in my opinion, well, we already know the man is a little slow, but I think he still sees the United States as what it was in the 1950s, when the United States still did not have a lot of global competition, mainly because most of our global competition got blown apart during World War II. And because the United States was blessed geographically to be centered and sandwiched in between two oceans, and it makes it very hard to get over here and blow up some stuff, because this is before the era of missiles and satellites and all that other stuff, and you have to get a B-52 bomber to fly over here, and it's going to be about 8 hours to get across the Atlantic, and so by the time you get here, we're ready for you. I think he still thinks the world exists in that realm. And what he keeps forgetting is a lot of these countries, first of all, we have interdependent relationships with literally every country that's named. But at the same time, a lot of these countries don't need us in the way that we think, which is why all of these countries are making their own alliances. You got countries that don't even like each other getting together. Japan, China, and South Korea. They have had smoke for each other forever and a day. Even they getting together. This is a very silly example, but this would be like J. Cole, Kendrick, and Drake getting together to go in and diss, I don't know, 50 Cent. They getting together now. They all buddy. That's what that's looking like. You got countries that don't even mesh well connecting. And really what it's doing, it's opening the door. Now, listen, I'm not somebody who buys into this China's the bad guy. China is just doing exactly what the United States is doing. Everybody wants to be number one at something. But this is just opening the door for China to continue to, grow in the realm that they're growing. I've already told you, the United States at some point is not going to be number one in the world at everything anymore. We're already not. And when we're talking GDP, China's only a few years away from having a larger GDP than us. It is what it is. People in the United States are going to have to be fine with being number two. But at the rate that this administration is going, we might need to be found being about number 66. Because again, everything that's there, we've not only gotten rid of guardrails and protections, none of these business decisions make any sense for the country collectively. They only make sense for private, super wealthy individuals. Bunch of nonsense. And so, make it make sense. And this is the result, again, white men and their ego. You can't tell them anything. Trump and his entire team are not budging on this, and they are convinced this is a great thing. It doesn't matter how much the stocks drop. I saw that the futures already dropped 1,000+ points for leading into tomorrow as far as what the guesstimates are going to be. Tomorrow is going to be a bloodbath on the stock market, by the way. So good luck with those portfolios, right? And so again, that's the danger of when you have people who see themselves as the standard. And again, that's always been my perspective and viewpoint of how I view white people collectively. I know people get annoyed because they're like, you always throwing white people in this. Yes, I'm always going to, because this is on y'all. For me, y'all are on my permanent shit list. Sorry. It's F y'all permanently around here in these streets. Sorry, collectively. And so with all that being said, when you operate and see yourself as the standard of everything, you can never, ever challenge yourself to evolve or grow or look at things differently because you think you're always right. And so for a lot of white people in America, especially the super wealthy, like somebody like Donald Trump, who's never had to work for anything, he doesn't even live in the world that we live in. That conversation of cause and effect is not a thing for him because he can always just buy himself out of something, or he can always have people in his corner. Look at how 34 convictions plus whatever, and he's what he had 91 counts total with all the other stuff. 34 convictions. We saw what happened with that. He was given a ceremonial sentence that doesn't mean anything. It's just on paper he was convicted. He doesn't have to do any jail time, no fines, no nothing. We saw what happened with the documents case, the classified documents, just throw it out. That gets thrown out. Department of Justice runs out of time with the federal case with regard to January 6th. Like, you watch this man just skip away, right? Skip away. Yeah, and Georgia's situation, nothing, no accountability. So when you have people who've gotten to skip and skate and do whatever they want to no consequence, there's nothing you can tell them. There's nothing that will get them to see the long-term effects of anything. And this man is almost 80. He doesn't care because he's about to be dead anyway. Father Time will call him soon enough. And so even if he runs this country into the ground, he'll still be rich. And when he goes on, I'm sure he doesn't really care about his legacy either. It is what it is. He won't be here. So that's kind of where he's at. And so there's so many people who keep trying to make sense of this. Like, oh, well, it's going to be a process. There will be pain. And it's like, why are we signing up for pain? Why? None of this makes any sense. We're now creating beefs with countries that we had good relationships with. How do we have beef with Switzerland? Switzerland don't even jump into nothing. Every time there's a war, Switzerland be like, we ain't in it. We just want to take a nap. We was taking a nap. We good over here. Leave us alone, right? All these different places, you're starting all these things. So as we destroy all of our economic relationships with our business partners, hey, all right, China, well, y'all go ahead and jump in. China said, okay, y'all don't want to get there. Okay, well, China, hey, what's up, UK? How y'all doing? So again, there's going to be some long-term effects with this. So that's why I say when these surface level conversations where people are like, oh no, we got to give it to them. This idea of painting everybody as the bad guy in the United States is the only country that does everything right and everybody needs to be like us. You have to get out of that mentality. We live in a global world. Globalization is a thing. Everybody's connected. Maybe if the internet was not a thing and so on and so forth, y'all could still try to live in these nationalist bubbles you want to live in. We're all connected, whether you want to be or not. Everybody's decisions affect everybody. If two countries over in Southeast Asia decide to get in a nuclear war and start dropping a bunch of nuclear bombs, understand the nuclear fallout will affect us here in the United States when it comes to air quality and radiation, right? If, there is, I don't know the name of what peak it is. There is a random, it's not random. There is a mountain somewhere in the Atlantic Ocean. Either it's somewhere off the coast of Africa, not too far. I don't know where it is. Either, long story short, there's a mountain that is eventually going to collapse into itself. When that mountain collapses, because it's a huge mountain, it's like a volcano or something in the ocean, or it's above the ocean, but I think it sits on a fault that's either separating or sliding or whatever it is. We've talked about seismic activity. When you have faults that rub against each other. Let me do this vision. They rub against each other. That will cause an earthquake. Sometimes a fault will slide behind another. That causes an earthquake. So when you talk about like the Northridge quake of 94, you had a fault sliding under another one. Or sometimes a fault will push up Long story short, this mountain is I think it's sitting on a fault. When that mountain falls into the water, understand the entire East Coast will be under hundreds of feet of water. It won't even be something like a tsunami where we get a warning and you can see the waves come. It will just be a wall of water coming. A whole wall. There will be nowhere to run. So, and if you are probably within 100 miles of the coastline, you are probably going to be in danger that day. Everything in the world affects us to some extent. I think in the United States, because the United States is somewhat of a wealthy country, people always feel exempt from what happens because Americans think they can buy their way out of everything. Understand the value of the US dollar is going to keep going down, especially with cuckoo man's economic policy. And again, the world is also just changing. Great empires have their day, and then the next one comes in. The United States has been running the show for a really long time, but the United States stopped investing in itself because instead they decided, and this goes back into white Americans collectively, because they're the ones who kind of dictate what happens in this country when we're talking about voting. They decided instead of investing in education and the sciences and healthcare and technology and things that could make things great for everybody, they decided, let's spend all of our time taking things away. Let's spend all of our time making suppressive laws. Let's spend all of our time having Jim Crow laws and redlining and segregation and housing discrimination and job discrimination and discrimination in healthcare. Let's spend all of our time blowing up and bombing all these other countries for whatever reason, because instead of working on ourselves and allowing us to be in a space where we create enough GDP where we don't have to worry about what's ever happening in other countries, we'll just bomb other countries and steal their oil. We'll bomb other countries and take out their leaders. We'll go to Argentina and Chile and all these different places in Panama and take out their leaders. And we'll put in our own people to kind of make sure that they align with U.S. interests. We'll go to the continent of Africa, take a few of their leaders and put in some puppets that can kind of, again, align with our specific interests. We're never going to spend the time to make sure that our actual kids are good because we want to celebrate Reagan getting into office because he was an actor and he can show us the lifestyles of the rich and famous while he cuts over, 80 programs on his first day in office. 80 programs that the people utilize. And then we watched bankruptcy skyrocket in the 80s. We watched the increase when we talk about incarcerations. We watched the cost of housing skyrocket. We watched the cost of education skyrocket. The only reason education is expensive is because once it became available to everybody after you passed the Brown v. Board of Education bill and black folks were no longer only limited to going to HBCUs and not getting into any of the main schools, white folks decided, well, we need to do something because we don't want them coming to our schools. And boom, all of a sudden tuition becomes expensive. State schools all of a sudden have tuition fees. Everything is tied to shenanigans in this country. And so, unfortunately, for you and I, we have to live through the end result of bad policy, bad decisions, and a lot of very, very racist policy implemented and put into legislation through power. And not only put into legislation, but sustained. We are living through what you call the sustaining of what white folks want collectively. Now, because folks are losing their jobs, they're at the town halls panicking and everything because they didn't think it was going to be them. And they forgot that the super, super wealthy don't care about them either. But again, for a lot of people in white America, they saw themselves as one of the elite. They see themselves in Elon or see themselves in Trump or Zuckerberg and all of them because of their white skin. And they feel that they have a piece of that. And so, yeah, punish all the bad guys. Even when they're talking about the conversation of fraud, the image of fraud is not white people in offices working at the federal government. Their images of fraud are black people with government jobs. Black people living in PG County with nice houses or Montgomery County, Maryland with nice houses, right? Black people working in these federal agencies all across the United States or in Europe. They see that as a problem. Perfect example. My mom has a friend who her husband was in the military. And so they got stationed in Germany. And so the friend, the husband was working in the military. She ended up working for the U.S. government. Now, one of the things about the U.S. military, when you live overseas, they will provide you housing. So when we lived in Italy, my parents didn't have to pay a mortgage because they give you military quarters to live in. And so what the friend ended up doing, she worked this government job because they stayed in Germany for about 20 years. And so she never spent her paycheck. Every government check that she got from working her 9 to 5 for 40 hours a week like everybody else, she kept all, why am I freezing? She kept all of her paychecks. And then the husband, he was the one that was paying the bills, so on and so forth. After they left Germany after 20 years, she was sitting on big money because she also invested a lot of it. So they were like multi-millionaires. They probably would sit on about $3 or $4 million because she invested not all, but she invested a significant portion of what she was making from her government checks. As far as I don't know what agency she worked at the time, but her paychecks, she made a whole lot of money. The husband, he took care of the bills. When they got back to America, she, invested some of the money. She did some real estate. She's living good. And this is a black family, by the way. So for people in white America who think that we don't deserve anything, when they see somebody like that thriving, who made the best out of whatever situation they were in and made it work, they see that as a problem because that family has what that white family feels is theirs, which is why white Americans continue to vote against their interests every single time. I don't know if you saw that survey where they asked the people, did you support Obamacare or the Affordable Care Act? And all of them said they supported the Affordable Care Act because, they didn't realize it was the same thing, but just Obama's name alone was a problem. This is where we're at. This is what we're living through. Nonsense. And so, and I just want to clear up one other thing too, because some folks again think these tariffs are a good thing. We've already gone through this. This was 2018. These were the tariffs Cuckoo Man put on China. And China responded and said, okay, well, we got a soy tariff for you. That is what took out a lot of U.S. farmers. That's why so many U.S. farmers went bankrupt and needed bailouts. And we know the story with that. White farmers got bailouts from the federal government. Black farmers did not because of the conversations around being USDA farms, and many black farms were not. Biden gets into office, says, hey, let's allocate some money for a lot of these farmers that were disenfranchised. Because again, they couldn't say black. This goes back to that lawsuit from 1999 when black farmers sued the federal government with just nonsense. Because we know at one point, black farmers owned 15 million acres of land. 14 million of those acres are now gone. And they lost 98% of this land in the 20th century. So the 1900s. There was a lawsuit in 1999. They lost the lawsuit because the judge was like, you just can't say that you're black and to prove racism. You got to do something else. Biden administration said, okay, well, we know how to work around that. Let's use the terms disenfranchised. Some of these terms that I just read, right? And so this thing is freezing. I hope y'all can still see me. And so anyway, I say all that to say, we get the Biden bailout, $4.5 billion. What happens? White farmers get mad. They say, oh no, this is reverse discrimination. You're leaving out the white farmers. And so they sue to stop that payout. They said either you stop the payout or we get a piece of it, right? Oh, thank you. My friend Whitney gave me the mountain I was talking about. Cumbre Vieja Mountain. That's the mountain. Thank you, Whitney. That's my road dog. Anyway, going back to my point. So with all that, black farmers, now they can't get their money. There's a whole lawsuit. Everything's in litigation. Black farmers then sue the Biden administration like, hey, you're supposed to give us our money. What's the problem? So then all that goes through. Finally, they're allotted $2 billion, not the 4.5, but the $2 billion. So we've already been here. And that was just farmers. Now everything's got a tariff on it. Cars, food, clothes. All you people that be getting them clothes from them fast fashion websites off Instagram, y'all about to be paying some Nordstrom prices for Shein. Just be ready. All right. And again, it's different because the guardrails are gone. So, whoo. And again, even with those first tariffs with 2018, we lost 300,000 manufacturing jobs because of that. And again, you can look at the ISM numbers to kind of get that. All right, let me take a break. For some reason, my chat is frozen. So let me pull it up on my phone to make sure I'm even still live, because that would be something, wouldn't it, if I was just up here talking and nothing was going on? Am I even still on this thing? Let's see. And of course, I got to sit through an ad. I'm finally getting a new MacBook as soon as this new Jack Swing episode comes out. For sure. All right, this thing needs to quit tripping. Let's go. All right, let's see if I'm even still live, folks. Oh, okay, I'm still here. Cool, perfect. All right, so let me read the chat from, I'm going to just do it from my phone. Don't judge, right? The MacBook money went to the car. Okay. Somebody said the amount of info on these lives is unreal. Thank you for that. I appreciate that. I don't know. I just for some reason, I tend to remember a lot of stuff. I don't know if it's because when we lived in Italy, we only had one channel to watch on TV, and which I do think they should do in the United States. We didn't have advertisements as far as like commercials. There was not going to be like a Pepsi commercial. Oh, drink Pepsi because good drinking Pepsi. Every commercial was like a public health announcement or history or trivia. Everything was something informative. And I think that would be, they're not going to do that in the United States because money is power. But I do think money is power. Oh, God, it really is. But knowledge should be as well. I do think on like children's networks like Nickelodeon, Disney, what else do the kids have? Is Noggin still a channel? Whatever all those channels are. I really do think there should be an increase of that kind of content in the advertising or in the commercials, because I retained all of that watching it as a kid. And so those just random things I just remember. Like I remember watching the commercial about George Crumb. That's the guy that made the potato chip. He went to a restaurant. The guy went to a restaurant, ordered some like sliced potatoes, and he just wanted them fried hard. And he kept sending them back to George Crumb, who was the chef. And the chef was getting annoyed because I'm like, how many times do you want me to keep slicing these potatoes? They thin already, man. Damn. And so finally he got annoyed after it got brought back like a third or fourth time. So he cut them super, super, super thin and then fried them really hard and put some salt on them. And boom, it was a potato chip. And then it was a hit at the restaurant. And next thing you know, it was a business. I randomly remember that commercial, and it used to air. It was like 1998, right? That was 20 plus years ago. It's just random things. So I don't know. I just always like to retain information. I was going to audition for Jeopardy, but Jeopardy be pissing me off because sometimes in categories, it'd be like Shakespearean ex-girlfriends. I'm like, okay. All right. Let's see. I'm mad this thing froze. Somebody said he literally turned all of our allies against us. It makes no sense. Why are we purposely starting something? That's what does it like. I'm sorry. If I ever were in office, my goal would be, listen, I need everybody to peacefully so we can be good. That's it. You do your thing, I do mine. Let's just make sure we ain't hurt nobody and we're good. Leave it at that. But this idea of painting every country to be our enemy, he's talking a lot of mess for somebody that's getting ready to see Father Time in a minute. He's using a whole lot of war words when we got a whole lot of young folks right now that are draft age. You know, it's weird to watch all these people. And Biden used to get on nerves with that too. I'm not even gonna lie. I used to hate every time I hear them say, we're gonna stand up to China. I'm like, why do y'all keep the relationships that are with these different countries? Listen, all these countries, everybody wants their money. Everybody wants to get rich. I don't understand why there's not a conversation of diplomacy to just make it so, listen, we ain't got to be all best friends, but we also don't got to be in everybody's way and start all these different things. I get it. It's competition, it's business, but it's getting to the point where greed is going to be the reason why we lose a lot of people. Whether it's another war we get into, whether it's, again, deregulating and doing just any and everything for profit. Like, again, it's kind of like that African proverb. When two elephants fight, it's the grass that suffers. The elephants are fighting. Okay, they are up there throwing hands and swinging tusks and everything and using in the nose and slap. And we are in the grass just getting stumped on. Stumped on. Huh. All right. Somebody said China. Like Trump's voice. All right. Yes, that is very true, Tyler Hackman. Biden did gain some manufacturing jobs, which was really stupid because then half of these stupid unions didn't even endorse him in the last election. They still chose racism over their own livelihood, and now some of them are mad because they're getting fired. What did you think was going to happen? My God. Make it make sense. Oh, Reba, speak on it. Reba Amberger said, and DEI won't be factored into the next draft if it comes to that, where they're going to be taking everybody. And well, you know who they really going to focus. They're going to focus on us. That's the given. Okay. Jim Banks. Let me get to that fool. Let me close this out. All right. So Jim Banks is a senator from Indiana. And one of the things that we've seen, like I said before, is the lack of empathy with everything that's been taking place. You have politicians who, especially Republicans, I don't care. And what I do think it is actually, let me play the audio first before I say what I think it is. Because I think this is a bit deeper than what's happening here. Jim Banker, HHS. It was an HHS employee that had just got fired. Okay, here's the audio. Let's see. Let's make sure I hear this properly. Watch it play an ad. And it would play an ad. Come on, YouTube.
Find someone unexpected.
Let me turn this down. They ain't getting my money. All right. Here we go. All right. Here's the audio.
Hi, I was a worker at HHS. I was fired illegally on February 14th. There are many people who are not getting social service programs, especially people with disabilities. Are you going to do anything to stop what's happening?
You probably deserved it.
I deserved it? I deserved it. Wow. Yeah, that's great to hear. Why did I deserve it?
Because you seem like a clown.
All right. So that's the audio, right? So the person who has just lost hood, somebody, I don't know how long they've worked under HHS, but This is a government employee that was laid off during, it sounds like the probationary layoffs that were in February, where anybody who had been in the federal government for, I think, less than either a year or two were fired immediately, effective immediately. He goes and he confronts this senator and is like, hey, man, what are you going to do about all of us who've lost our jobs? And the guy says, well, you probably deserved it. Why? You deserve it because you look like a clown. All right. These are our elected politicians and officials that are supposed for us. And I think what has happened is, they're convinced, and I'm talking about these politicians that have been moving in such a vile manner. They are convinced that they're locked in. And when I say locked in meaning they're untouchable at this point. The hope, in my opinion, for a lot of them is that Trump can change and shift enough of the laws where there won't really have to be any more conversations about elections. And a lot of these people who are in these positions will be there long term. And if anything, the only time people will lose these positions as being in the Senate or in the House will be if Trump personally pulls them out of it. I kind of think that's the direction they're trying to go. Sorry about that. My bad. Okay. Anyway, it should be kicking back in. So sorry about that, guys. I lost my train of thought on this crap. Damn, what was I talking about? I didn't remember what I was talking about. Damn. Anyway, wherever I was going with this, it was going somewhere and it was gonna be good, whatever I was saying. Anyway, yeah. So yeah, there's a lot of people who mean well. There's a lot of people who go into politics and they want to have positive impact on society. But unfortunately, the best politicians never make it to the main stage because, our politics is bought out, which is why I've always said you have to take money out of politics or we're going to continue to stay in the same weird bucket that we're in where people run on the values that people want and then they flake on us. Look at Cinema out of Arizona. She ran as the people's champ. She went in there and I'm going to go and fight for the little guy and the little girl. And we're going to do this. And as soon as those checks came in from the lobbying groups and the payouts, she flaked on us and got in the way. And a lot of what Biden could have been able to accomplish, she was the main person standing in the way of. Same thing with Manchin out of West Virginia. So it's, you got a lot of people in there right now who just do not care about the well-being of anybody. And like I said, and with HHS, we saw who they just got rid of. They got rid of the scientists. They got rid of the people who, are doing the research to make sure that we're all good. It's not even just about cutting dead ends. They're cutting people that are essential. They're cutting the people who are giving us the insight to make sure we know how to maneuver if there's another pandemic or if there's anything else crazy that's happening, right? All right. I'm going to pause and read some comments. Thank God my live is back up. Don't worry, it's a new MacBook next month, finally. Like I told you, I had to use the MacBook money to buy a car. Either that or maybe they're censoring me. Who knows? Next thing you know, because all these corporations are caving to Trump, YouTube might start regulating and taking channels down. All right, let's see what we got here. Somebody said, what's the likelihood of the next president removing the tariffs Donald Trump is enforcing? I do think a lot of these are going to get reversed quickly. And what will end up happening, because one, our economy is going to just keep collapsing and falling apart. And all these people who are losing money in their portfolios are not happy. What will end up happening, he will start backtracking and be like, yep, they finally learned their lesson. Yes, because Indonesia really needed to learn a lesson from us. So he'll do that and pass it off as a victory. Because all they do is lie. They will lie to our face and pass it off as a win, even when things are bad, which is wild to me. So it's a mess, right? Let me see. Somebody said it's coming. Elon will mess with YouTube. I don't think Elon can get to YouTube because Google's just too big, right? YouTube at this point actually is projected to have a larger revenue stream than Disney. Elon can't afford YouTube right now. YouTube's evaluation right now is $550 billion. Elon doesn't have the money. Thank God you can finally see that for a change. Right? He don't got it, which your broke ass. No, I'm just kidding. He ain't got it. He got money, but he don't got YouTube money. So there's that. Speaking of Elon, let's talk about the special election out of Wisconsin. Because on the last live, I talked about a few elections. We talked about the 2 House elections in Florida. Now, we knew it was going to be a very, 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 very long shot of Democrats unseating or flipping those seats because those are very, very red districts. So we saw that coming. However, there is a trend that you did see in Florida where those large margins that Trump won by, where he had won by 30 plus points, were cut in half. So you are seeing people that are over this nonsense. It's just in those two districts, it was so heavily red. Don't worry about it, right? There's still a special election in New York that is coming up. So that one is in June. So people in New York, pay attention to whatever's happening in your House election. The goal at this point is somebody, if you can get enough leverage in the House, even if you don't have the full House, if you can keep that House majority slim, it makes it so that the House has to still depend on the Democratic side with some of these bills that go through, right? In the same way that there's certain legislation with the Senate where you need 60 votes and you just can't get away with 50. So you kind of had that going. So with Wisconsin, there was an election for their state Supreme Court. And it was a really big election because this state Supreme Court is going to be the court that makes a lot of decisions on things like the future elections, some of the policy that's taking place, and even some of this kickback towards the current administration. And you know who decided to show up? Elon said, let me buy this one too. And so he goes to the rally. You saw him with the big cheese head hat because he's just like us. He's just one of the everyday Americans who just loves football and cheese. And so he goes to this rally. And again, he also had promised to give $2 million. So he was going to give two $1 million checks to people that had signed up to do whatever, blah, 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 blah. Now, mind you, there was some shenanigans with that. Just like he did during the past election, those checks went to people who are already locked in and somewhat on his team. One of the guys was like a member of some conservative media company, some other crap. It's never going to be the random Joe who has the potato farm. So I hope these people stop falling for it. Anyway, with all that being said, after spending $25 million on a state Supreme Court election, the GOP candidate lost. And the Democratic, or I guess, yeah, I don't know if you really associate them with Party for the Court Justice, but either way, the candidate that Trump was rallying behind and the Elons and all of them were rallying behind lost, right? Kind of got blown out of the water. Why does this matter? Again, it kind of goes to, again, showcase that right now, the only thing that is slowing some of this foolery down with all of the Trump executive orders is the courts. That's literally what we got right now. Congress, there's not a whole lot Congress can really do yet. There's just some things there's not a whole lot they can move on. And so the court system has really been the saving grace so far with a lot of what's happening. And so, that's why that election actually matters. I'm hoping that people really, again, this is the time to tune in and lock in. Like I've been saying, it wasn't the time to check out. I know some folks are like, I'm done. It is what it is. If there is a local election in your area that matters, understand your vote does carry some weight. Everybody always want to say voting didn't matter and so on and so forth. Well, there was some voting and we saw what we got. And this is what we're living through. We are living through the end result of what people voted for, allegedly. And so here we are. By the way, it's been enjoyable watching Tesla's stock continue to crash. I saw that they lost 13% in the first quarter. Keep it up, guys. By the way, those trucks look terrible. I walked past one Sunday, and it you know how like the stainless steel, if you have like stainless steel appliances in your house, like you remember that fridge I had, like when I still used to do the videos in my kitchen, you see that stainless steel fridge. That fridge was so hard to clean because you got to get like the special stuff to kind of clean it because you keep putting fingerprints every time you touch the handles and stuff. Anyway, I didn't realize like the Cybertrucks had that same problem on the sides. Like the older ones look terrible. I was like, all right, enjoy it. Anyway, Cory Booker. So I saw that Cory Booker had the 25-hour-long speech on the Senate floor. At this point, let me take a sip on this one. Because we are not living in a traditional space, and again, Congress is a little limited, at this point, I'm like, look, throw whatever at the wall works. And so even if that means, because a lot of people are saying it was performative, it's not doing anything, it's more so ceremonial, blah, 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 blah. I hear that. However, I'll use myself, right? I think the purpose of that, even though it may not connect to some people, I think it's still to an extent for somebody who was watching or paying attention or who just was like, why I keep seeing this story about this guy. It made somebody here in America go and inquire about what was happening and get a little bit more informed about what's going down. Even if that's not the most tangible thing, it's still a win. Now, to use myself as an example, I think Personally, I really started locking into American politics in 2004. Now, I started paying attention in 2000 during the presidential election with Bush and Gore and all that stuff. I was locked in with that. But as far as being passionate and actually caring about stuff, it was the 2004 election. And it was mainly because of what was going on with Ohio. There's one thing I want to read. I pulled up the article from 2004 just so I made sure I had this quoted right because I didn't remember the full logistics, but I remember how it made me feel when I saw it. And so this is out of the New York Times. I'm just going to read the certain segment because there were some discrepancies with the polling. One of the things that took place, which is one of the things they do all the time, you make sure you don't have enough polling stations in the major metropolis areas or metropolitan areas where all the people live, and you put all the polling stations in the rural areas, and then the people are in the lines all day in the rain. But anyway, this is from the New York Times. As it turned out, though, Ohio was the crucible. The state relies heavily on punch card balloting machines of the hanging chad variety. Again, this is 2004, so you got to go back 20 years. Voting machines in Ohio failed to register votes for president in 92,000 cases over all of this year. Again, this is 2004, not current. A number of that includes failure to cast a vote, disallowed double votes, and possible counting errors. An electronic voting machine added 3,893 votes to President Bush's tally in a suburban Columbus precinct that only had 800 voters. Officials in Ohio will be able to reject some of the approximately 155,000 provisional ballots cast there, offered to potential voters whose names could not be located on local election rolls because of the ambiguity of the standards. There were also long lines at the polls, and it is unclear how many people grew too dispirited to keep waiting and ended up not voting. In Ohio, Edward B. Foley, who teaches election law in Ohio State University, said there's a cloud over the process, even though there's not a cloud over the result. Anyway, I said all that to say, I remember specifically somebody had some kind of documentary or something about this years ago, but I remember seeing the images of all the black people standing in the rain, waiting to vote for hours and hours and hours. And at the time, I was maybe 15 or 16, and I didn't understand why people had to be in line so long to vote. Because where I was at, where my mom just went to the thing and went in and out. I just thought that's how voting was. And then so to see the image of just all of these black people who want to make their voice be heard but are being disenfranchised, when I saw just that little bit of information with the story, and whoever did whatever news special, I don't know if it was like 2020 or Dateline or something, I don't know. It kind of, from that moment, I locked in politically and started paying attention to stuff and really wanted to understand why things were the way they were. And so as far as Cory Booker, this man spent 25 hours talking about all of the terrible things currently happening under this administration and why it affects us and why it will affect the future and why America's on the wrong trajectory. And the part that's also interesting is, people started talking about Strom Thurmond, right? He was the guy that did the 24-hour and 18-minute filibuster. Now, mind you, Cory's wasn't an actual filibuster because there was no legislation actually being voted on, but Strom Thurmond did this 24-hour and 18-minute filibuster in 1957 against the Civil Rights Act of 1957. Not the one that passed in the 60s, but the one of 57. Imagine being so racist that you can stand for 24 hours and 18 minutes to argue about segregation and making sure that black people do not have access to the very services that they pay the same taxes, sometimes more taxes for than their white counterparts. Imagine that. And then after all of that, Strom Thurmond had a black daughter, right? He hated black people so much, but didn't mind sleeping with us. Imagine that. Now, the only thing I was thinking about, Cory didn't go to the bathroom this whole time. He was hungry. I was like, how does that work? Man, because, once you start getting a certain age, I forgot how old Cory Booker is. I think he might be in his early 50s. I don't know how old he is, but, you get to a certain age. You ain't supposed to hold the bladder too long. You're supposed to go, right? Yeah, but if anything, like I said, if anything, somebody got informed. Let that be the goal. I get it. So there's some folks who want to be on level 10 all day. Let's burn everything down. I get it. I'm kind of at that space and point. I got to sometimes check out from some of these stories and find happy things because I'm like, 25 to life. If I had to get it, I guess I might get used to it after 6 or 7 years, just in case somebody get on my nerves. I got to take them out. I get it. But man, it's a time. That's some stamina to stand there for 25 hours. I don't even know my voice. No, every time I do one of these lives, when I wake up the next day, I don't have any voice. My voice is all scratched up and hoarse and tired and wore out. I can't imagine doing that for 25 hours and standing there. And what do you even talk about for 25 hours? We've seen some filibusters where, politicians were reading Dr. Seuss just to kill time. But he actually was up there the entire time talking about things that actually mattered. And so, oh, he's 55. Thank you, Demetrius. So, again, everybody's doing whatever they can in the capacity that they can. So if that might not have been the tangible thing that people wanted, again, have people utilize a deeper context and understanding of what we were up against in November. We wouldn't have had to worry about this to begin with. But here we are. All right, let me see some chats here. Oh, see, now everything wants to work and flow all smoothly on here. Right. Somebody said ketamine Elon trying to buy out voters but failed. I think people also see through the nonsense. Like we see that you're pumping money, and I said that some lives ago too. We see that you're pumping all this money into these elections. I can't think of whoever that billionaire lady was a few months back that was talking about, oh, and any politician that goes against what Doge is doing, we can primary them too, because she was a billionaire. I was like, see, y'all getting a little comfortable over there. What I would like to see is some of these billionaires just walk in the street like everyday people and see if they still got that same confidence. Bet you a whole lot of change because somebody will be hit in the face with a freaking brick. Thank you, Blissed Out. May 20th, 2025. There is a primary election in Pennsylvania. Somebody said, I commend Cory Booker for standing up and speaking truth to power for 25 hours. How many people can actually do that or even want to do that? Right? It's, listen, and at least if there is one win, even though it's a little bit more symbolic, now the longest filibuster will no longer be the racist man telling everybody why black folks don't need to have access to anything. It will be this, even though I kind of almost want that to kind of stay in the history book so people can remember where America was and where it is now, because it's actually still in the same place it was in 57. Folks are just in denial about it. The same racism is still there, right? Ain't that much changed. Okay. Oh, Louisiana too. I did want to talk about that really quick too. Shout out to y'all. Thank God y'all went and voted. We've actually talked about Louisiana a few times because I prayed that y'all didn't let that man become governor. That's the guy who remember that ad where it was like this is when they were pushing the narrative that when it was going to be the 2020 election and Biden was going to be running for office, and they were trying to paint the idea that Biden was anti-police and they were going to get rid of the police. And then he had that ad, Jeff Landry, and he was like, fine, if you hate the police so much, the next time you need help, call a crackhead. I'm like, you racist old mother. It's like, these people are just terrible, right? You knew who he was talking about. Just call a crackhead. And anyway, he won. But, there's been a lot of really crazy, just draconian laws that have just gotten passed and amendments that have been voted on in Louisiana. And I'm just like, God bless the people of Louisiana. But thank God Louisiana said not today on these ones. So there were 4 amendments that were on the docket for Louisiana. The Amendment 1 failed. Voting no on this amendment meant that lawmakers will not have the authority to create new specialty courts. The Louisiana Supreme Court will also not gain expanded power to discipline out-of-state lawyers. Okay, remember how we talked about even the law firms caving and everything? Again, that conversation of cementing, it's not even just about putting judges in there, but you start punishing lawyers for practicing law, and then you take into account whatever Trump and them are doing as far as trying to pull funding and pull contracts from law firms. It was a bigger picture, right? Get it at the state and local level, get it at the federal level, right? Leaving legal oversight unchanged. That's what it would have done. Supporters argued this would have strengthened the court system, while opponents worried about giving lawmakers too much control over judicial matters. Okay, so that failed. The voters said, no, we're not doing that. Amendment number 2 failed. Keeping the state's current income tax structure and spending limits intact. This means no automatic tax deductions for seniors, no repeal of the property tax on business inventory, and no guaranteed teacher pay raises. While some viewed it as a missed opportunity for tax relief, others were concerned about the potential impact on state funding. So they painted it to be like this big payout for the teachers, but there was all this other BS in the law that was going to screw everything else up for other people in the long run. But they tried to paint it as, yeah, vote for this because this is for our teachers. And if you saw the ads, it's all, do you support the teachers? And so they made teachers the face of this bill when they were only a fraction of it, right? I also am somebody who thinks within our laws, a bill should be clean. I don't like when they have bills with a bunch of stuff added onto it because they can also use that for optics and politics too. So sometimes you might see somebody make a protest like, "Oh, I don't like." I'm gonna make up a situation. I don't like Maxine Waters because she voted against health care for babies, and in reality, she probably had to vote on some bill that was going to strip away, the majority of the funding for county hospitals in I don't know, nationwide or something like that. But there was one segment at the bottom of the bill that was one paragraph that said, to this bill, there will be a small amount allocated to make sure that baby formula was cheaper. But the bigger bill is get rid of all the county hospitals. And so then people see that you voted no on that because it's like, no, I'm not voting on that. I want a clean bill without that. Give me one or the other, but not both. And then people will see that and say, oh, no, she voted against babies getting formula. She hates the baby. This is why there's the attack on black baby. Like it turns into that. And then there's all kind of fools on social media that have platforms. I'm not naming any names today that like to go and spew different things. And again, try to latch into the emotional appeals of their listeners and their fears, and then kind of shift narratives, paint narratives to be what it is that they want, because again, they get a nice check spewing a lot of nonsense, and again, serve as agents of chaos. We got a lot of that going on. So that's why I prefer clean bills. Amendment 3 failed. Voting no meant that the state will not expand the list of crimes that allow juveniles to be prosecuted as adults. Louisiana's existing rules on juvenile justice remains in place, with opponents arguing that trying more minors as adults would lead to harsher sentences without addressing rehabilitation. And we know, in addition, let me look up. I feel like Louisiana still has capital punishment. Let's make sure. Does Louisiana have the death penalty? I think they still do. I just want to make sure I'm right before I just come up on here and start talking stuff. Do they have it? Yes, they have the death penalty. And so one of the concerns, even in that aspect, we know that there's a bunch of issues going on society-wise with our youth and making poor choices, doing a lot of things. We've been seeing it in DC, even though the crime is finally slowing down with the kids. And shout out to Baltimore as well. I see that y'all homicide rate has dropped drastically under your current mayor, so he's trying to make it happen over there for y'all. But in the same way, we've seen people get the death penalty and become exonerated. The fear would be if you start increasing what adolescents can be charged as adults for, there's that opportunity in the conversation of the death penalty. And the next question becomes, do we want a rehash of George Stinney's running around, where you're going to have, because again, you also have people who end up convicted of things that they haven't done. You also have people who end up in situations where they just couldn't afford the right representation and stuff didn't work out for them. But if we go back to George Stinney, that was a 14-year-old who was accused of raping some random white girls and killing them. And turned out he didn't do it. And he was arrested and tried on the same day and killed on the same day, right? 14 years old, they gave him the electric chair. The kid was so small. I'm guessing he was probably like how I was when I was 14. I was a really small, not frail, but small frame kid. Like I was like, I don't know, 14. I was up 5'2", 85 pounds, 90 pounds at the time. They had to stack some Bibles for him because his head couldn't even reach the electric little zhuzh thing, right? And so they ended up killing this kid who didn't even commit the crime. There would definitely be an increase of those kind of instances and incidents if you started to expand what youth could be tried as adults for. And we know that we're already, and this is not to give a pass to crime and say, let folks run and do whatever, but we also know that Black youth are heavily policed. We already know there's an effort to lock all these kids up to begin with. Well, every time people try to use these narratives of, oh, Black people are only 13% of the population, but make up 60%. And I'm like, but okay, can we also talk about, well, what's the percentage of neighborhoods that are policed? What's the percentage of people that are overly prosecuted or when charges are trumped up on people, right? There's so many things that you can take into account. And I'm just like, I hate when people use that, because then at the same time, if we really want to go there, if y'all want to do that and start painting Black folks to be this, well, 80% of people who get arrested for child porn are white men to Black men's 4%, if we want to start doing numbers. Don't ask why I saw that, but I saw it on Dateline the other day. Anyway, so, okay, what was that? Let me go back to the other thing. So they got that going. So that was Amendment 3. And then Amendment 4 failed, keeping the current system for filing judicial vacancies. Courts will continue to operate under existing election timelines rather than being required to use the earliest available election date. Critics of the amendment had argued that rushing judicial elections could lead to less voter engagement. They know exactly what they're doing. All right. So with all 4 amendments rejected, Louisiana voters have opted to maintain the status quo, keeping the state's current policies on taxation, legal oversight, criminal justice, and judicial vacancies in place. So again, that Governor Landry was ready to set some stuff up. Now, you know, like there's a whole lot of folks who have been elected in Louisiana that are just messing stuff up. That sheriff that got in office, tearing stuff up. You got a whole bunch of different things taking place. So again, sometimes when I say people vote for harm reduction, this is an example of that. You just want to get into a space where I really want people to start thinking collectively. Yes, think about yourself and your livelihood, but when you move as a unit, it just works better. And so, unfortunately, there's been a lot of me, myself, and I in this era of nonsense. And when you're in me, myself, and I, and F everybody else, it's like you just allow everything to happen. You just don't worry about it. So, there's that. Okay, let me see. Avocado Queen said, I was gonna say, ever watch an episode of Dateline? Look, me and my friend Whitney, that is like Dateline is a given. Like my YouTube TV library got like every Dateline 2020 and 48 hours episode and Frontline episode saved. That is, if I'm not outside on a Friday or Saturday, you know, Dateline comes on Fridays and Saturdays. I'll be watching at 9 o'clock and I watch the 10 o'clock rerun on Saturday. Like that is my show. And Nightline. All right. I'm really turning into somebody's uncle. Look, I'll be watching Prices Right in the morning and be watching the court shows because I like watching white folks get yelled at by Judge Judy. You know, she racist as hell too, but it is what it is. Okay. Somebody said, did I see Kanye? I have no interest in Kanye. I'm so sorry. I checked out after slavery was a choice. I stopped caring. Kanye gets none of my attention. And like I said a few lives ago, Kanye is, yeah, we know he has whatever's going on up here, but Kanye also is moving in a way where I can tell he's frustrated because the antics that he used to be able to pull in 2009 don't carry the same weight because it's just a different day and a different time. And so, you know, the only thing he can do is become more extreme in his antics to get attention. And people just aren't giving it to him because we got other things going on. And so it's like, yeah, you want to put on your little clan outfit and do whatever. Your music ain't even been hitting for the last 10 years. It's not, sir, bye. And, you know, painting the whole conversation, oh, I didn't want to have my actual kids with Kim. But when you ran for president, you stood up there bawling and boohooing, talking about Kim wanted to abort one of the kids, and you were running for president to protect. Shut up. I don't have time for Kanye and his nonsense. Him and all his fake pro-blackness, even though every woman he's with don't look nothing like his mama, if you catch my drift, he can save it. He's not for the collective. He's not. I don't care how much y'all love his music. He was one of my faves. The first 3 albums, loved. But no, I have no time and energy for his nonsense. Not right now. On my list of priorities, he's not even on the list. Got other things to worry about. It is that. That's all I can give him. I'm so sorry. That's crazy too, Omega. I have seen that. Calvin, have you discussed the move toward death penalty by firing squad? I just saw the case in South Carolina with the guy that was killed by firing squad. That's wild to me. To me, that is people getting off on like a self-gratification of seeing someone else's pain. A lot of people it's just weird to me. I personally, if I had to be a guard or something like that, I'd probably get fired today. I can't see myself standing with 10 other people aiming weapons and just shooting somebody that's tied up. That's crazy to me. Wow. I also don't support the death penalty either. So there's that. I just think there's too many lapses and loopholes in our judicial system for the death penalty to be a thing because there's just so many. I want to get this number because the number of exonerated folks that are Black is so freaking high. Percentage. Hold on. It's really high for Black Americans. Yeah, we're 13% of the population, but we're 53% of the exonerations in prison. And so yeah, of the 3,200 people exonerated since 1989, 53% of them were Black. And so it's just there's too many loopholes and too many people that have probably been electrocuted or lethally injected that didn't do whatever crime they were locked into, right? A lot of people don't feel that Troy Davis was somebody who should have been executed. That was one of the very first videos I ever made on this channel. So, it's a lot. Yeah. All right. Um, by the way, Kentucky residents, you guys have a Senate race in 2026. Mitch McConnell is finally getting up out of there. And you actually have, I want y'all to be careful because I know what they think they're trying to do. You have Daniel Cameron who's running, right? They got a black face up there. They're kind of doing like what they did in Georgia with the Senate race when it was Herschel Walker and Warnock. Put two black folks up there, and then hopefully there's enough black folks who just vote by skin color and say, hey, let's go with whoever. So let's just make sure we have the semantics or the optics right here. Daniel Cameron is the same guy that oversaw everything with regard to the shenanigans around the death of Breonna Taylor and the cover-up, right? Daniel Cameron is not for us. Know that, Kentucky voters, especially y'all. He's not for us. Go look who he's married to, and see how he moved. He was a part of that entire cover-up with Breonna Taylor. He was under all of that investigation, but we saw what happened. All that got thrown out under this current administration. He is not for the collective. He's a black face in a high space, and they're hoping that his blackness will convince a lot of black Kentucky voters who may not necessarily lock into all their politics to vote him in. The other candidate who's also running is a woman, Pamela Stevenson, who just launched her campaign. What, unfortunately for me, is sad is, now this is a black woman that's running. I just, the way that this country runs, you see so many qualified black women run for these positions and they never even get close. Look at Val Demings in Florida. We knew she wasn't going to win her opportunity when she ran against Rubin. You knew it wasn't happening. Even though she was qualified, everything was right there. And hell, she was a police officer. That should have been a plus for white folks because they love to enforce law and order on us, but not themselves because they vote the 34-time convicted man back in office. But you knew Val Demings wasn't going to win, right? Even Kamala, before the shift, once Joe stepped out, there was one of these lives where I said, because this was right after, I think it's my live when I did the response to the debate. And I said, Kamala, there's no way they're going to put this lady in. They're not. I don't care how great she is. They're not going to put her in. Then as we got closer, I saw the light. I was like, oh, there's the chance. I saw the DNC convention, everybody. I was like, she might have a shot at this. And I saw that, I saw all these different things. And when she did the speech at the National Mall, I was like, okay, you know what? There might be a chance. And I remember saying on that live, yeah, it's not even going to be close. She got it, y'all. And then I got my wake-up call and I had to remember where I lived. And I said, no. White folks said no, right? And so my fear, unfortunately, is I don't know if white voters in Kentucky are tired of McConnell shenanigans. McConnell has been in office for 40-plus years and is one of the sole reasons why we have so many of the problems we had. I'm not about to go through it all, but you can go back to whatever live I did right after this last election because I spent a good 30 minutes on McConnell and all his nonsense. I don't know if Kentucky voters are tired yet or if they're going to continue and put another cuckoo person right up in there. Daniel Cameron will not care about the well-being of Kentucky anything. He will be the puppet that will be in the way, just so y'all know. All right. Let's see here. Let's see what we got. I saw they want the death penalty for Luigi. Hey, it's a weird time. Somebody said I can never, and I'm a fair amount younger. Oh, that's about Booker on the thing. Okay. Somebody said the people need to stand up. Primary useless Dems and put some effort in challenging Republicans in the House and Senate. Folks need to start running for the midterms yesterday. It goes back to what we've been saying where there has to be strategy. We're in an era, and this goes back to what I've been saying about this whole surface level politics stuff. Everything is reactive. We are in such a reactive era. And it's like we got here because folks were in their reactive era, but the folks who were organizing and strategizing all this nonsense, this has been in the plan for years. Project 2025 was just the icing on the cake. Republicans in the GOP for years, they wanted to go back and reverse what was happening with women's reproductive rights. They wanted to get the tax codes changed in 2018. All of this stuff, they've gotten everything that they wanted, even when they weren't in power, right? And so because there was a long game, they know what they want. The status quo is white men to the front, everybody else to the back, get in line and cooperate. Anything that goes against that, they're going to fight against tooth and nail, no matter what. And even when they're in power, they work to cement. They don't get comfortable. They ain't stopping. Their work is never done. That's why Edward Bloom, like we said, Go back to the video I did on him. When you got his introduction, he ran for office in the state of Texas, specifically in one of the districts in Houston, and he ran in a district that was majority black. They were not interested in his politics, and they voted against him. He's had a vengeance, he's had a vengeance against Black Americans ever since. And every lawsuit that he's run behind, to some extent, has had a detriment to Black Americans collectively in the entire United States. Everything from him challenging the idea of one person, one vote, where he wanted to restructure how the voting would be and center it on households and all these other different things, where it would have pretty much taken away the power of the individual vote. He tried to sue and get that. He lost that case. He's the person who spearheaded all the affirmative action cases. That also includes Abby Fisher, who didn't get into her university and somehow thought it was us. We were the reason why she didn't get in the University of Texas. And, Supreme Court said, nah, nope, you just sucked. He said, my work is never done. Fast forward to 2023, he got it done. He got some Asian Americans to feel like they were losing out because somehow we were taking their seats, and they became the face of it, and he funded it, and affirmative action is gone. The Fearless Fund. This is why when people be talking all this, we got to build our own institutions, da-da-da-da-da. What conversations have y'all been? Where y'all been at? We've been having these conversations. The institutions keep getting built, and they keep taking them down. Fearless Fund, venture capitalist business opportunity as far as grants for Black women business owners to get $20,000 to $25,000 grants for their startups and for their businesses. Pocket change, $25,000 is not even any money. Okay, nobody goes on Shark Tank and asks for $25,000, not even close. Anyway, Edward Bloom was like, nope. Then I was about to use a certain word. You using too much. Nope, that's reverse discrimination against all the other groups, to the point where it gets to almost to the Supreme Court, and then Fearless Fund is just like, forget it. We don't have enough money to keep paying for lawyers. We'll just shut down, right? So their work is never done. Everybody else just gets comfortable. And that's why I always said, do not lock into symbolism and assume symbolism means that you can rest. Symbolism just shows you where we've come from, or whatever else is there, and where we're going. But it's not anything tangible. And so far, we've been given symbolism nuggets all the time. And it's why I think so many people check out, and so many people have a surface level approach to politics and everything happening in the world. You got to be up on current world affairs in order to really make it, because you got to know what it is you're up against. You don't want to walk into anything blindly, right? Even if you want to start a business or something, understanding what you're up against, what county you live in, what the laws are, that will help you determine whether you want to start your business in the county you live in, or if you need to move it to another county, or if you need to save it to another state, or do something else. Like, all those things matter, right? Okay, I ain't meaning to get on my soapbox, but I need folks to get active, figure out what works. Oh, Florida, I meant to talk about that too. Thank you for bringing that up. Child labor laws. I'm gonna read this really quick. I'm not gonna read the full article. I just took the screenshot to the part that I want to highlight. So, in Florida, one of the things that's happening too, because of what's happening with ICE and the deportations, a lot of people who are undocumented are no longer showing up to work, right? Well, you have a lot of, even, was that Nebraska? It's Nebraska, I think, is the state that's concerned about possibly being bankrupt in the next 6 months. It's either Nebraska or Kentucky. I really want to say it's Nebraska, but long story short, all of these people who are no longer working these fields, it is starting to affect the country, right? It's starting to affect different states. So in Florida, with all the people getting either yanked out or people no longer showing up to work, the labor force is being affected. They got to find ways to get people to work. So they decided, let's change the laws around children. And so these are the laws that are on in legislation. They have not been 100% signed into law because there are still some votes that need to take place throughout their election process or legislative process. So you have HB 1225 and SB 918. This would allow employers to schedule any 16 or 17-year-old Floridian for unlimited hours and days without breaks during the school year. I'm going to read that one more time to make sure you heard it properly. This would schedule any 16 and 17-year-old Floridian for unlimited hours and days without breaks during the school year. This would also schedule 14 and 15-year-old Floridians who have graduated high school or are homeschooled or are virtual school students for unlimited hours and days without breaks during the school year. Now, in my field of work, in my 9 to 5, on the days that I have to go in, I'm guaranteed about an hour out of that 9 hours that I'm there, right? You get your 30 minutes for lunch, you get 2 15-minute breaks, so on and so forth, right? That's not what they're getting. This is saying that they can go and work at Taco Bell or wherever they're going to work for however many hours and they don't have to be given a break. In the same way where we saw that law that Governor Abbott pushed in Texas, where water breaks are no longer mandatory for all these people working construction in that hot humidity, no longer mandated. Same kind of energy. Let's see. These same two bills would reverse long-held child labor protections for Florida youth. Florida's Department of Education and Department of Business and Professional Regulation both emphasize that the state's current child labor laws are meant to protect children's health, workplace welfare, and education. Yet, HB 1225 and SB 918 would undo decades of these vital protections for Florida's children, catalyzing increased exploitation of youth workers in the Sunshine State. Let's see. Child labor violations in Florida are at their second highest in 15 years. Since 2023, the DOL has publicized cases of employers from across the state scheduling over 118 teens past legal work hours, resulting in nearly $250,000 in fines. All were in food service or amusement and recreation industries. However, these cases are only those reported and investigated, so the numbers are likely higher. HB 1225 and SB 918 could endanger the 72% of employed 16 and 17-year-olds who also attend school. Enrollment data is available for working Floridians age 16 and up. Among the 83,847 teens age 16 and 17 employed in Florida, there are an estimated 60,264 juggling work and school demands, 71.8% of those kids. If these bills pass, they will remove nearly every state guardrail that helps to ensure youth are not too exhausted to perform well in school and in other extracurricular activities. If employers are no longer required to consider school schedules, this will leave youth who are striving to complete school while holding down a job with an unfair choice: accept the hours their boss schedules them and put themselves at risk academically, or lose their job and the money and experience that comes with it. Youth living in poverty and immigrants without documented status would have especially unlikely view to quitting as a viable option. So again, there is a lot happening here, right? Child labor law, anything for the dollar. Anything for the dollar. And when we even talk about the conversation of poverty, we already have the situation where you have a lot of youth who have to work to support their family because mom or dad or whoever the caretaker is not bringing in enough. So there's a responsibility also placed on that kid to bring in more money. Now, some folks would say, oh, this is good because now they can work more hours and get more. But no, this means you can have 16-year-olds working at 2 a.m, but still have to be up for school, right? And understand that, and this is a pattern I saw with my kids. Now, I understand that there are privileges that I was afforded growing up. I never had to want for anything financially because my parents were pretty well off in the later years. And my dad was also just very frugal. Even though my parents had a nice check, he taught us the appreciation and value of money. So I was not allowed to have name brand clothes in high school. I didn't have like Nikes and stuff like that. The only name brand shoes I could have were K-Swiss, right? Or Shell to Adidas because they were like $40. But I didn't get my first pair of Jordans until I was 31. So I say all that to say, I never really had to necessarily get a job. And also things were just cheaper back then. We didn't really need a lot of money. I lived off of like $25 a week. My mom would give me $25 a week because I cleaned the house and did all the dishes and stuff. And that $25 a week was lunch money and, anything else that I wanted to use it for. Maybe if she was nice, she might give me another $15 so I could buy a CD or something. And then I did get a job at the skating rink. I told a story about that. Don't feel like going back to it. But anyway, I didn't really have to work. So I got to enjoy being a teenager. And so a lot of the teenagers I have that I worked with at the center, a lot of them were so adamant about getting jobs right away. And it wasn't because there was a need for the family. It was just because they wanted to have money. And my approach, this is just me personally. I love for teens to have a sense of purpose or a sense of responsibility, but I really think teens in this era have got to have that time to just be teenagers. And I say that because once you start working, you're not going to stop till you retire anyway. So what is the rush to get a job? If you are fortunate enough to be in a capacity where you don't have to work because maybe your parents have it, or the things that you want are attainable through, cutting a few yards here and there, or cutting some grass, I personally feel that that's what teenagers should be doing, right? They should be doing the extracurricular activities and doing things that are fun. Yeah, get a job if you want to get a job, but it should not be something where you're working at 2 and 3 in the morning. I support the idea of getting a part-time job or something just to get a little pocket change here and there. But when it becomes to the point where it's the priority over school, It's the priority over their long-term goals. It's the priority over their health and their energy. And now they're missing school because they had a late shift that ended at 4 a.m. and they're definitely not getting up at 6 to go to school at 7. That's a problem, right? And so I had a few teens who they were like, whatever, Mr. Michael. So they had their jobs. And so some of them loved what they were doing and didn't realize that, yeah, you love what you're doing because right now you're living with mom or grandma or auntie and you don't have to pay a mortgage and a rent. And this wonderful money that is great now you can't even pay your cell phone bill and a car note with this together. You're going to need something a bit more viable. But some chose to, get these jobs at, these department stores and stuff like that. And some chose to not go get a trade or get a certificate or go to school or do anything. And now we fast forward some years and it's like we're trying to help them all build their lives back up, because it's like there's certain doors and stuff that close because they prioritize having that part-time job when they're 15 and 16 because they thought it was so important. And now they're 20, 21, 22, still at that part-time job, maybe not even in a management position. And that money that was so good doesn't stretch the same way because there's inflation, because maybe they tried to be grown and moved out of mom and dad's house because they wanted to be on their own and now they broke every day. So it's just so much going on. I just personally feel I just see the difference with the teens that I've worked with. The ones who, they might have had a job, but they still prioritize school and being a teenager. I just see the difference in how they've maneuvered. Now, this is not to exclude those who are in a different capacity. It's different if you're helping the family, even though I want teenagers to be teenagers, but I get it. Sometimes there's a responsibility you just got to have. It is what it is. Not everybody is afforded the same deck of cards. I get that. When it's that situation, I totally understand, and there's no judgment. But if you have the privilege to just at least enjoy those years of being a teenager, I say enjoy it, right? It's a crappy world you're about to come into as an adult anyway. Yeah, get that experience, get that job, but you should not be at a part-time job that's taking your whole life, to the point where you're prioritizing that job over school, right? Somebody I knew personally when we were in college, they got a really good job at Pentagon City Mall, right? And they ended up becoming the manager. So we were all freshmen in college. And so at the time, they were making like $30K a year as a freshman. So it sounds like a lot of money because you're not paying a mortgage, you're living in the dorm, you just got to go to class. They chose to just not come back to school because they were like, I'm doing great. And I'm going to stop that story right there. Okay. Calvin, you should watch Boomerang by Spike Lee about the minstrel shows, but I've seen that. Yeah, thanks, Sarah, for sharing that. About the minstrel shows and black people betraying their own for white supremacy. Yeah, I remember that movie. Let's see. KO said, right, a cute little summer job. Yeah, get you a little something here and there, right? But the idea of, and again, please do not take this as me trying to blanket statement the experience of a working teenager in the US. Everybody has their own thing. My argument is just, if you are afforded the opportunity where you really don't have to do hard labor and hard hours because, you're able to get by with whatever, or maybe your parents give you an allowance or whatever, get a job if you want to have one. You want to have a sense of purpose. You want to get something on your resume, but do not set yourself up to prioritize working at freaking PetSmart as as everything. And then saying, well, you know what, I like this so much, I'm not going to go and sign up for cosmetology school like I wanted to, or I'm not going to do this apprenticeship program that I read about through Amazon, or I'm not going to go to community college anymore, or I'm not going to go try to get into a 4-year. Long term, I just want some long term thinking. That's it. So please don't come on here fighting me. I'm not trying to sound elitist or anything, but I really, really, really feel that these teenagers have got to have more time to just be teenagers, because they're living as adults. I've always said one of the reasons that I think crime is so high with teenagers in DC is because DC is a very adult city. There's not a lot of third spaces for teenagers to go to. There's not a lot of affordable things for them to do. This is an expensive city for adults. And so even when you have even when I first moved here, like Gallery Place, Chinatown, all of the restaurants and stuff, after I forgot what time they used to have a curfew, you couldn't go into the restaurants if you weren't over 18, even if you had money to sit and eat with your friends. That wasn't my experience as a teenager. You know, we would get in whoever's car, it'd be 5, 6 of us stuffed in the car, and we would go to Applebee's or Ruby Tuesday or whatever, because that's back when you could get like a nice meal for like $11 with the drink and fries included, right? And we sit at whatever place. Actually, what we used to do, my Washington State folks, you might know what I'm talking about. There was a movie theater on 84th, and everybody would go to the movie theater on 84th. And sometimes you go to, like, I remember we went and saw Honey. This is 2004, 2005. We went and saw Honey, and initially Honey was sold out. So first we had to watch, I think we had to watch Elf, that movie first, right? Then we saw Honey afterwards, because the movies were a little bit cheaper back then. So you get $30, you could stretch it, right? Then we saw Honey. That was a Jessica Alba movie. And then in that movie theater complex, there was a Ruby Tuesday. And I think we all went right across the street to Ruby Tuesday afterwards. All of that for under like $30 for the day, right? That was my teenage years. You know, so there was no such thing as you can't come in here or you know, and if we didn't do Ruby Tuesday, there was a YMCA in South Hill that always had late night at the Y. And so you could go and play basketball till like 1 a.m. They had the racquetball rooms, and because I danced and we were always working on different shows or talent shows and stuff, we would always get one of the racket rooms and we'd be in there just getting down and just getting down, right? Because you put that little speaker in there and that thing got some acoustics. Oh, you really felt the music. So we always had things that we could do. If we didn't do that, you know, I lived in the middle of nowhere. There was a big giant lake. Sometimes we all just went to the lake and hung out. Somebody do a bonfire. And you're like, that was my childhood. DC doesn't have anything like that. I mean, there's stuff in Virginia and Maryland, but these kids in the city have nothing to do. Nothing. Everything is expensive. And so, of course, they're going to start breaking into cars. Of course, they're going to be robbing people on the sidewalks. Or they're going to, you know, find somebody's house to just sit and drink at all day because there's nothing else to do. That's their nature. That's their age. All of them want something to do. They all want a sense of belonging and want to be a part of something. And so when a city goes through the extreme process of gentrification and not only destroys all of their neighborhoods and pushes them out, scatters them all around, it's bad enough most of these kids don't go to school in their neighborhood. So that sense of camaraderie and community is already not there amongst the youth. Then no matter where they go in the city, somebody got a problem with them being there. Even if these teens go to the monuments, which is boring, by the way. If you live in DC, you don't go to the Lincoln Memorial. You don't go to we don't go. We see it every day, right? When I used to come home from working with the kids, I drove past the Capitol building every day. Those aren't places that I want to go to. It's just there, right? And so, you know, when these teens do go to these places, people that are tourists and stuff always look at them like they're there to cause trouble or start something. So it's just, I really want teenagers to just be able to live and be teenagers. That was the one thing that I did enjoy about the Tyler, the Creator concert, since half the crowd was a bunch of kids. I'm like, I was happy to see all of them just enjoy themselves and feel free in that moment. Like, enjoy it, because you're going to be an adult soon and you're going to have other things to worry about. Enjoy that period of not having to worry about a whole lot. Mine is what's next after I graduate. Okay. I didn't mean to, I keep it on my soapbox tonight. I'm sorry, guys. I just got so much I got to say. Anyway. Let's see. And mind you, these jobs in Florida, you know, these are going to be the farm. These are going to be teenagers out there picking oranges and stuff. That's what the goal is. So don't be in a rush to go and do that as a teenager. I'm sorry. Sarah said, dang, 25 don't do it. Yeah, 25 is nothing. That 25, you go. Speaking of, when I went to the Tyler, the Creator concert, my lemonade was $11. Now, I will say it was free refills. But I was in one of the, like, I wasn't at the aisle, so I didn't feel like getting up and going walking past people. But I worked that little lemonade. I was sipping through that cup. You know, when the ice start melting and you get every last drop. I said, let me drink this $11 lemonade. Like, man, but they gave me a big cup, so I'll take it. Let's see. Somebody said, don't forget the pesticides and work conditions. Yeah, all that stuff that's out there. Exactly. What up, Marcel Robinson? What up, Sochi? Sochi said, why did my chat just bounce when I was about to read your comment? Hold on, I'm going to find it, because my parents wouldn't let me work and wanted me to focus on school. I did the same with my son, and I'm thankful for that. My parents were kind of the same way. I remember when I was in 9th grade, they had this program where you could go and pick up trash on the side of the freeway for $300 each month during the summer. So you get $900 at the end. And my mom was like, what? No son of mine is going to be standing on the side of no freeway with all them cars driving all wild and fast. No. And I was so mad because $900 to somebody's 14, 15, that was like $30,000 to me. I was thinking of all the stuff I could do with $900. I was like, man, you know how many CDs I can buy? And so she was like, no. So finally, when I finally got my first job, and it was just a coincidence. I just happened to go to the skating rink, and this girl was like, oh, you know, we're hiring, right? And I was like, really? And I begged my mom, like, please, can I get a job? Because she's like, you don't need to get no job. You need to focus on that school. Now, mind you, I was a great student in high school. I was terrible in school until about 6th grade, but high school, top percentage, I was number 36 out of 581 when I graduated. I was doing pretty good. And so my mom was like, fine, this better not affect your grades, because I was already involved with other stuff. Like I was on a track for like a day, but it conflicted with me doing the dance schedule. So I focused more on dance, but I had the dance stuff going, I had all the theater stuff going. I was student body president at the time. I was a member of, what was it? Key Club? I think it was called Key Club. I was involved, right? I lived in the middle of nowhere. You had nothing to do but be involved at school. Otherwise, you get bored, and the next thing you know, you're doing meth or something, because Spanaway was the capital of meth in the country at the time. Okay, all of those episodes of Cops back in the day were always in Pierce County, Washington. We used to get excited to watch Cops because we knew they were going to be in our neighborhood. Okay, and I know what street that is, right? Speaking of Spanaway, I just saw they had that mass shooting at that house party yesterday. Crazy, and again, teenagers, they need something to do. But anyway, so I get the job at the skating rink, and the job was to be the DJ for the skating rink, which in my head, I was like, oh, this would be cool. I thought I was going to be like, because I had turntables. I didn't have mixing equipment, but my dad bought me turntables when I was 13, and then he gave me his whole vinyl collection. So, I knew how to work a turntable, but this was more so there was just a playlist in iTunes, and you just selected and just monitor. I was like, oh. Anyway, long story short, the girl that recommended the job, I think I told the story before. It's in one of these podcasts. Long story short, somebody got shot in the face, and that didn't come out right. Let me bring this back so this doesn't sound weird. The girl that recommended me was one of the girls. You know how in high school there's those teenage girls that want to be grown so bad. These are the girls that, like, it's cool to get pregnant. Like, they want to get pregnant. Like, they want to later think, yeah, I'm pregnant. Yeah, she was like one of those type. Anyway, she had a boyfriend that was like 26 or 27. Mind you, we're in high school. We're like 17 years old. So she was one of them ones that used to brag about, oh, I got my man. Okay. So anyway, she moved out of her mother's house and moved in with a friend. The friend also worked at the skating rink. And I was pissed because that friend, I used to be crazy over her. Still am, but she's on the other team, so she ain't looking at me like that. And so the two of them had recommended me and everything like that. And the two of them, the girl that recommended me moved in with the friend and her mom into this apartment. There was this random day where the one that recommended me, they went to 7-Eleven with the boyfriend, because the boyfriend was driving, and went to 7-Eleven or to one of these convenience stores. It was the one that recommended me and her friend in the car. The boyfriend ended up robbing the convenience store, and then the two of them witnessed it. And so, of course, when everything came with the police and stuff, I don't know who testified, who was a witness to what, but the 26-year-old figured that somebody snitched on him, and it was going to either be the girlfriend or somebody else. But he figured it was the girlfriend. Now, like I said, the girl that recommended me is the girlfriend, and she moved in with the friend and her mama. That some random night at like 1 or 2 in the morning, the guy pulled up to the people's apartment. And then he was looking for his girlfriend, the one that recommended me. Miss Grown, I'm 17, I got the 26-year-old man. And this is not to try to vilify her, because again, there's lots of adults that manipulate impressionable teenagers and make them feel more valuable than they really are in the eyes of that adult. That's what that's about. So please do not try to paint the girl to be some little fast chick. She's not. She's just a teenage girl who some man made her feel special. And so she thought she was a part of something that was more. Anyway, I say that to say, the guy comes to the apartment looking for the girlfriend. She's not there. So when he knocks on the door and they open the door, the first person that's there is the girl, the friend, right? And so he shoots the friend in the face, point blank range, boom. Goes into the apartment looking for the other girl, still doesn't find her, and finds her mom. And then he shoots the mom. Fortunately, both of them survived. The girl who got shot in the face, she had gotten shot like right here, and then the bullet came out here. She had some great doctor work, because if you see her, you would never know any of that happened. And fortunately, she survived. She was the one who had to call 911. Like, she had to crawl on the floor, and I don't know how she did it. I just think she's like the bravest person in the world to have gone through that and still been able to, function and still be rational in a moment of chaos like that. Some people would have given up and just said, forget it, right? And then the mom survived as well, but the mom had like lost a kidney and I think an eye or something like that. Anyway, I say all that to say, everybody had ties to the skating rink. So when it was finally my day to start, because I hadn't even started yet, right? I just went through the orientation. Lady at the skating rink was like, you know what? It's hot in here. It was like this white lady. She said, it's hot in here. And I'm thinking, hot? It's I forgot when part of the year it was. It wasn't really hot though, because Washington State at the time didn't get that hot. It might get to 75. That was a hot day. So I'm like, hot? She's like, hot as in too much going on. I want no one with any association to what just happened working here. So then I was let go before I could start. The girl that got shot in the face got fired before she could start. The girlfriend that wasn't even at the house that the guy was looking for got fired. And apparently the guy worked there too. I don't remember seeing him, but everybody got fired. That was my first job. And my mom was like, that's why I told you, you don't need to be working at all. No, you need to just do what you do. So yeah, that was my story time. But crazy. All right, I'm going to I need to talk about Marvin Sapp, and then we can talk music and some other stuff. Okay. I also saw the nonsense Cuckoo Man is doing with the Smithsonian institutes and everything, as far as the museums. Again, all these DEI rollbacks. African American Museum of History and Culture is being targeted, and all the other museums. They better sue and use some common sense. You better start using these court systems. The Smithsonian's, I think, are either 40 or 60% funded by the federal government, and the rest is donations and agencies and institutes. So we'll see what happens with that. But I will say right now, if you Black or if you are interested in that museum, you better go now, because in the event that Cuckoo Man is able to make this executive order stay, the first 5 floors of that museum just gonna have to close. Right, that museum has everything in it. It has Emmett Till's casket. It has artifacts from different slave ships that were recovered. It's so much stuff in that museum. The first 5 floors, don't even worry about going to. The middle floor, where you can trace your lineage and all that, they're gonna have to get rid of that. I don't even know how it would stay open. Only thing that's gonna be open is the food court. So go now. All right. As far as Marvin Sapp, because somebody was asking me since I was a church kid. This is that clip that went viral some days back where they needed to raise $40,000. So he had the ushers lock the doors, and he was like, ain't nobody leaving until we get the money. All I'll say is this. Marvin, you want to move like that right now in this economy where people are losing their jobs, where inflation is going back up, where the stock market is crashing, people's retirement is being affected, protections and guardrails that people depend on are being snatched away because of stupid politics. This is the time that you want to lock in and start demanding almost a ransom from people. And what's confusing to me, I know in gospel music, they don't make as much money as the secular artists, but I just saw Marvin Sapp at Capital One Arena at the Kirk Franklin show a few months ago, right before the election. And listen, it was an arena tour. Oh, DC was sold out. So it was Marvin Sapp, Yolanda Adams. Who else was on that one? Dang, I don't remember who I was there. Marvin Sapp, Yolanda Adams, Clark Sisters, Fred Hammond, Kirk Franklin, and I'm skipping somebody. Now, I know they got to split the money a whole lot of ways, but you should have at least half of that 40,000. You got all these songs and stuff and all these tours. Like, my issue that I've always had as a kid growing up in church is that what I always noticed is the people who often were the most religious sometimes were also in the most destitute situations financially. And so with almost every church, actually every church I've ever gone to, the majority of the congregation are working class Black Americans who are just trying to make it with the best that they got. And so when I see moments like that, where you're forcing people and everybody got to give this, and there's 1,000 people watching online. Sometimes people don't have it. And there's nowhere in the Bible where it was mandatory to give like that. I don't know what y'all talk about. Like, y'all keep stretching that kind of stuff where it's mandatory to give a certain amount because the preacher man said so with the doors locked. I'm sorry. We're not living in those times. Y'all have to figure something else out. Y'all keep trying to make these giant mega churches and all this other stuff and all these expenses. You're going to have to realize what leverage you have with whoever your congregation is. That's why I got so annoyed with Creflo Dollar that time, which is interesting because he's changed his ideology on tithing and all that. Now he's like, he won't preach on that stuff anymore. But I remember when he had that private jet, right? His jet was all broke up and raggedy. He needed a new one. And he wanted his congregation to help him raise $67 million so he could have a new plane and do his ministry all around the world. Now I said $67 million and the whole church is broke. And I'm not talking about the church, but the members. I'm like, this is a working class congregation. Now, they still raise it for them. But my argument to that was, okay, if you think it's so important that you're going to go and do this ministry all around the world, $67 million could stretch so far for a lot of things, but you'd rather spend it all on one private jet? Do you know how many other people in your ministry team you could hire to go into all these different places and do the work of what it is that you guys are passionate about or what you believe in? You can start whole international chapters. You can start all kind of food banks, all kind of academic programs and tutoring, all kind of stuff you could do for $67 million that would benefit the community for years. That would be the seeds that were planted. I always say with the kids, because sometimes me and my old coworkers, sometimes we get a little sad sometimes when some of the kids don't do as well. You know, you'd be like, dang, did it all go in vain? We have to remind each other, we plant the seeds, it's up to them to water it, right? And so they could plant all kind of seeds and do all these different things. And, you know, instead, this is going to sit on just you and your one plane. You as one person in this plane. You could have flew commercial and still just bought it. Even if you didn't get a plane, you literally have the money. If they had given you this $67 million to purchase and literally buy out an entire flight commercially and bring all of these people that you've hired to do the work, because you by yourself can't change all of the world because you need some help, right? And so you would think if you're so passionate about whatever ministry you have spreading around the world that you wouldn't make it into this space where I alone can do it. That's how Trump be moving too. I alone can fix it. I alone can fix it. I'm like, you ain't fixed nothing yet. Right. And so it was crazy. So it just reminded me of that. And as somebody who grew up in a bunch of storefront churches, anybody, y'all remember them days, you know, it would be, especially if you went to one of them churches that only had like 50 to 100 people, they would have one of them services or a night service or something. And, you know, they had a goal. Today we trying to raise $800, right? Simple stuff. That's how you know we was all broke. $800 for 100 people we got to raise, right? And then, you know, they would, you know, the choir would be singing and we'd be marching, because offering time was when you got to show off your outfit. That was the time, the style, right? Everybody looked nice, but we all broke. Everybody walking and everything. And then we get back down and they'd be counting the money at the table. Deacons just be counting, moving that nickel. And then the choir would just keep singing until they were done counting. And then the guy will get the mic. All right, we still $120 short. I'm like, damn. All right, they got to pass the collection plate around. They pass it back. They did the counting, right? Choir got to do another number. Now this the choir's B selection. Choir got to do another number, right? So they counting and then they moving quarters and come back. All right, we still $46 short. Okay. Now the pastor annoyed the choir. He done told the choir don't say nothing else. We're just gonna be in silence while they get the money, right? They would sit and bring that collection plate back like 3, 4, 5 times until we had it. It was like, God. Now in that case, those are situations I think it's still chaotic, but I get it. Them churches really need it because it's like the lights are going to be turned off. They just aren't bringing in the money because the congregation don't have it. But when I'm watching celebrities who have money and have connections and access, you're Marvin Sapp. You can dial anybody in your phone right now who has access to you. You could call up Karen. You can call everybody you was on tour with just now. Call up all the Clark sisters, Karen, Twinkie, Dorinda. Who am I skipping? Karen, Twinkie, Dorinda. Denise ain't Jackie, because Denise ain't in there no more. You know, Kiara Sheard was on the tour. Every member that was in Kirk Franklin's choir, you can call them up. You can call up Yolanda. You can call Fred Hammond. He brought up some of the commission members. Tell all of them just to give $200 and did like $500. Everybody do a little piece. And then you call everybody you collaborated with on your last album or whatever songs you got. And you call all of them up, right? And then you call all the people that work at the record label and the agents and everybody just give a quick 500 song. You can make it happen rather than straining and draining the people in the congregation. We're literally, like I said, we just watched 222,000 people lose their jobs in a month. And you worried about this 40,000 that we don't even know is going to Lord knows what, right? Because the church probably paid for you to be there anyway to perform, because every time these gospel singers go to these churches, they often get a check. It ain't just a love. Listen, this whole love token thing that be in the church, that's the small churches. That's the churches I grew up in where they only got 100 members and somebody come, we got a little love token for you. No, these bigger churches, when they be bringing in the Kim Burrells and the Mary Marys, these people got fees, okay? Make it make sense. All right. I believe I have captured all of my heavy topics, so I will open the floor. I'm going to drink my tea, and then we'll go from there. Say, Calvin, you should create a political nonprofit. I'm trained out nonprofit world. I don't have the bandwidth anymore. I'm already, I mean, well, I will say on my website, if you go to calvinmichaels.com, there's two charities that I do support that are nonprofits. The main two that I support are Joyful Hands and Guns Down Friday. Now, Joyful Hands is an institution, or I'm sorry, a nonprofit that is, if you follow my podcast, it's actually started by Ava from the podcast. Now, Joyful Hands is a nonprofit that focuses on childhood education. And what it does is it tackles things both in the United States and overseas, specifically in Monrovia, Liberia. And now they've actually expanded to a few other countries as well. But in the United States, what they do is they do a bunch of backpack drives at the beginning of the school year to make sure that kids actually have not just backpacks, but supplies. So it has, you know, when they do these drives in August, the kids get these big backpacks with pencils, markers, toiletries. If it's for girls, they have girls cosmetic products. For boys, things like deodorant, all this kind of stuff. So they get these fully loaded bags. So that's one thing that they do. They also, every Sunday in a certain neighborhood, they do a food drive. And so residents in that area can come and get food every Sunday, right? And I mean, it's like produce. It's not just some BS, right? And then they also do community events and do health screenings and all kind of stuff they've given kids. But they do a bunch of stuff. That's the U.S. side. And then for Monrovia, specifically the Boycotty Academy, it's a school where kids unfortunately have to pay to go to school because the public school system is kind of a bit different over there. And so they also provide tuition assistance for the kids because the kids can't go to school if they don't pay. And so she's actually from Liberia, and she moved here when she was 10 because they were in the middle of the Civil War and everybody was trying to kill all her family. So she ended up here. And she remembers those days of being sent back home because she didn't have enough money to pay for her school, right? And so she found her old school once she got on her feet on this side and said, okay, well, I want to help everybody who's been a part of my life. So I want to help the people in the community I grew up in the DC area, and I want to help the people that I remember that I moved on from as far as when I relocated. So that helps the kids to actually be able to go to school. And so they get people to like sponsor kids to pay for their things. So I got like a few kids that, you know, I pay for all of their school until they graduate. And then they also built a library and books and stuff. And so one of the things I used to do with my center too, because we always got new books at my center all the time to the point where we had too many. And sometimes other groups in the area didn't want them. I would send whatever extra books that we had that we didn't need, we would send them over there or add them to the program with our backpack drive so the kids could get a book when they, so there's that. Then there's Guns Down Friday. That's the program specifically targeted at trying to combat intra-community violence, specifically in the DC metropolitan area. And this is why I say when people always talk about moments when the police kill somebody black and folks are like, y'all don't say this about black on black crime. Y'all only won't be mad when it's the white man to come kill one of us. But how can we expect them to respect us if we don't respect ourselves? Anyway, I'm like, y'all shut up with that, because there are so many grassroots organizations that are working in the community, and I mean working hard, trying to fix this nonsense. But the nonsense that we're living through is structural, and it's something that needs bigger push, bigger pull, but there's never enough resources coming from those up top. And so there's a lot of people who've decided we'll just figure out how to do it ourselves. That's what Guns Down Friday is all about. So they do all kind of events to try to deter, especially young teenagers and young adults, from getting caught up into other crazy things, especially if there are rumors about, you know, nonsense or something going on in the neighborhood. They'll try to have a special event somewhere else to try to encourage teenagers and young adults to go to those events. When people get shot and killed through gun violence, they support and raise funds for the family when it comes to paying for funeral expenses. Because again, when you have a teenager that gets killed or unexpectedly, you probably didn't have a life insurance policy on them, right? They also do school supply drives. They bring awareness. They also do health screenings. So those are the two that I get behind. If you want more information about them, they're on my website under Calvin's Charities. I think that's what it's called. So there's that. But no, I personally don't have the bandwidth to run a nonprofit. I've learned where my gifts are. I think my gift is taking information and relaying it to people in a way that's digestible so that people can get active and utilize that information to do what they feel they need to do with it. I think that's my gift. And, you know, working with kids. All right. Somebody said, "Where are you, Calvin? What happened to your background? Did you move?" Yes, I moved. So this is an office I'm in. So as opposed to filming from my living room, right? I agree with this, Tyler. Dems have gotten way too comfortable, and I think Dem voters are waking up. Hopefully, when things that is dire, we can get changed. I've always said there has to be a flush out. There's a lot of people who I think their time has come. You got to get out. You have to pass the baton to some new people, some new faces, some new energy. There's a lot of people who are still trying to run and move as if we're still in the old guard. This is the new guard we're living under. This is the new norm. Nothing that we were doing even 5 years ago can even thrive in what's happening right now with our politics. And so you got to get some people in there that know how to get things moving. And there's a lot of folks who are still trying to move like it. This is how I can tell when a politician is out of touch. At any of your campaign events, especially if you are trying to garner the black vote, I better not hear the electric slide music come on. I better not. To me, that is very 1992. That is still the era of, oh, this politician is so cool because they can do a two-step or they like the music like me. I don't want it. I don't want the electric slide at any political event. That right there, I'll look at you really, really crazy. Even celebrities. I don't mind celebrities being there or getting behind politicians, but your campaign, to me, should not spend too much energy and time solely on celebrity. Yes, celebrity can bring awareness to younger voters. The only reason I ever cared about Al Gore when I was in 6th grade was because I saw him on MTV, and for some reason he knew who Britney Spears was, and I couldn't vote, but I was like, oh, he sounds cool. And I was like, well, if I could vote, I'd vote for that guy. Listen, that's the mindset of somebody that's like 11 or 12. So yeah, there will be some folks who are in that kind of capacity, but a lot of politicians are dated. You know what killed me? Remember when Drake had what's that song? What's the Kiki song? Kiki. What was that song? Was that wasn't Nice for What? God, y'all know what song it is, whatever. But remember, it had the little "Are You Riding?" It had the little dance. I saw so many people who were running for office on the House level and in state elections that were trying to like do that dance with the challenge as their campaign. I was like, I get it. I really do. Yes, you have to pull in the vote or the attention of those who are a little bit more locked into pop culture, but this can't be the only thing you do. It can't be, especially for those that are incumbent, that have been in for years and years and years. Like, you just don't get to do no little dance and think I'm going to still ride with you. Like, I'm looking at this DC mayor. I'm like, ma'am, your time is up. You got to go, Bowser. I'm sorry. You done sold us out to all these real estate folks, and you can go. I was trying to ride with you the first term, but you start seeing the trends and the patterns. You got to go. Sorry. Much respect. And she a black woman. I should be trying to stand by ours, but once you start selling out the community and the collective to make all these rich white folks happy, you got to go. Sorry. So yeah, there got to be some change around here. Y'all are going in about this Florida thing. Jojo said, my dad always told me my job was to go and get good grades, stay out of trouble. I got the car when I graduated. I did the same for my daughters. Mine was almost that way, but they gave me my car when I was a sophomore, but I couldn't drive it until I was a senior. Just for me to go away to college and them not to send it to DC. We ain't sending that car to no DC. That's going to be for your college graduation. What? So like that car I got, it was an 04 Kia Spectra that I got in 03. And I really didn't get to drive it until 2010. Like 7 years later. I got to drive it a little bit as a senior, but only to school and back, nowhere fancy. I couldn't go to Seattle or nothing. I had to stay within the radius of Spanaway, and sometimes I could go to Tacoma, and that car better be in the driveway at 9 o'clock. So yeah, I got a car and didn't get to drive it for 7 years. Let's see. Somebody said the mall used to be their hangout spot. The mall was the place to be when I was a teenager. Yeah, that was when even celebrities used to still perform at the mall. Like one time, I remember 3LW was still kind of up and coming, and they performed at Tacoma Mall. Like the mall was the place to go, even if we didn't have money to like buy clothes. Because, like I said, I only had like $20 a week to play with. I never had money to go to the mall and buy outfits or nothing. But I could go to the food court and now get a little supersized fry and everything, because that's when you could eat everything and nothing grows on you. Like, man. You go to that food court, and the food court that's where you picked up for these. You could pick up, you get your next boo at the food court because everybody was in there. Everybody from all the schools. You folks got there from the bus because the one bus went up and down Pacific, and eventually if you get to Pacific and 48th, you can get to the mall. And there was the other teenagers that were cool enough that had cars and stuff. That food court at Tacoma Mall when I was coming up, that was the place to be, right? You get seen. Didn't even do nothing else, just walk around. We used to be broke as I don't know what, just walk up and down the mall. Ain't have nothing to do. I'm walking around with a freaking, what did I used to get? A Cinnabon, right? Me and my friend Chris, we used to split one every now and then, because the Cinnabon was big. But man, let's see. Somebody said 25 ain't even gas money. It sure ain't, because filling up that car be pissing me off. The only thing I like about this car is that it has a smaller tank than the other car I had, so I ain't got to spend as much on gas. All right. Somebody said, what? Oh, somebody said, crazy homebody girl said, Union Station used to be the spot, but it's a mess now. Happy they're trying to renovate and renew it. Yeah, well, which is crazy too, because if that DC budget gets rescinded at 1.1 billion. Well, I know the White House just was like, oh, because DC's budget is approved by Congress to an extent. In the event that 1.1 billion does not get put back into the DC economy, I don't know if that football stadium is still happening, and I don't know if Union Station is still going to get that renovation. But yeah, Union Station, when I lived in one of my other places, I used to always walk to Union Station because that was like the one place in town that had a Jamba Juice. And I used to always get a good smoothie from there. What up, Raywin? Let's see. Alan Lewis said Pierce County is the King County and is the south. I'm sorry, Pierce County is south of King County and Stonebridge County. Oh, okay. Geography lesson for somebody. All right. Oh, yes. Meth was big in my area. Like, yeah, lots of meth going on back then. Let's see. The video is actually from last year, but that's of no consequences. He's of his father, the devil. I have no idea what this is about. I don't know if that's the Marvin Sapp clip. I'm gonna just guess it's that. I'm not sure. That's the only downside. I'll be doing these lives and just be and the chat just be going. And then when I go back to the chat, I always scroll back up and try to come back down. So normally, if you notice when I go to the chat, I'm always referencing a conversation from 3 or 4 topics earlier. Let's see. Okay. Oh, okay. So this is Marvin Sapp. Okay. Les Likely was telling us it's a clip that was taken from a conference. He did that last year. It just went viral. Okay. So it's not a rate. Okay. Hear that. All right. Cool. Thank you for sharing that. And by the way, I'm not like anti the black church either. I don't like the way it's moving right now, but there was a point in time in history, like I've always said, the black church, the black mosques used to be like the central location for a lot of black politics locally, especially during the civil rights era, especially during Jim Crow. The church was the place to go to. As far as getting all the insight, even when we talk about like the bus boycott, the organizing took place in the churches as far as getting the information and the word out. All the pastors were told, tell your congregation, this is what's happening, because this is before, so there was no Twitter, there was no Instagram, there was no Blue Sky. The message had to get out there and you had to find ways to get it out. But this is back when people actually still went to church in higher percentages. So, hey, church was the best way to get the message across. That was the meeting place for a lot of stuff, a lot of the marches, a lot of the stuff, that was the meeting place. So I think the church, to an extent, the ones that are doing the work, because there are churches that actually do the work collectively in the community, that is, yes, they give the spiritual guidance or whatever else they have, but there's things where they're locked in. There's some churches that got whole academies and programs and stuff. So please don't take it as me whacking the whole church. But we know that there's a lot of other folks who I don't know what's going on. Some folks get into the ministry to get rich, and that is no secret. Calvin, did you see the Jasmine Crockett situation? They're really trying to set her up, and she really got to protect herself and have security. Oh, because of the hot. First of all, I've been calling him Hot Wheels forever and a day on this channel, so I'm glad they ain't found this thing because I stand by it. My thing is this: everybody gets my empathy. However, once you start using your power to do evil that negatively affects everybody else in their livelihood, you don't get the same privileges and empathy of other folks. So yes, he's in a wheelchair, but he's a horrible person. And personally, I feel he deserves to be in that wheelchair because, and this is not to say that people that do bad things deserve to be in a wheelchair, but him as a person, straight evil. So may nothing good come to him. That's all I got with that. And if I was Jasmine, I wouldn't apologize. I said what I said. It is what it is. That's how I would move if I was Jasmine. Right? They want to pick and choose when they want to all of a sudden be offended. Now, Trump can sit there and make fun of all them disabled people and do the arm gesture and mock everybody. And then folks want to pretend all of a sudden that they have a moral compass because Jasmine called that man Hot Wheels. Like he ain't cut all the funding from the schools. Like he ain't done all these different things in school over to people in his own district or in his own state. Please, that man, F him. And we already talked about what he did on the last live, right? Got all that money because that tree branch fell on him, got super rich, and then made it so nobody else could have the same kind of lawsuit. He freaking used the ladder and pulled it up with him and then closed the door. And now he's watching us from the observation window, telling us we're doing everything wrong. Please, F that little... I sliced the tires, right? And since they want to go ahead and do all this, get rid of DEI stuff and get rid of accessibility, they need to get rid of every ramp in Texas. I want nothing but stairs, just for him. Actually, no, because then the other people in Texas got to use the ramps. I'll take that back. Well, wherever he at, he need to use the stairs. He need to figure out how to get up there. Figure it out. You better be like, let me not. I'm not going to do that. Okay. All right. I'm sorry, y'all. I'm sorry. I'll save it for my next comedy show. Man, Piscean Beauty, No Wobble. I don't want none of them songs. The electric slides and all, you play that after you win. If you're trying to win me over, I don't want to hear none of that. I don't want the fish fry. I don't want none of that. No. That's just me. It don't help. And y'all said no boots on the ground. Okay. Either I am crazy or I just haven't been paying attention. So like I told you, I went to Houston a few weeks back for the rodeo, right? And so my friend that I was with had introduced me to the where them fans at? Like, so, the Zydeco, I guess it's called Zydeco or Zydeco. Houston people correct me, or the folks in that whole Southeast region, let me know if I'm saying it right or wrong, right? Because I had never heard of that genre of music. So I had been listening to all these different songs, right? And I went to, I forgot what that park is called. I don't know if it's called Liberation Park. It's somewhere in 3rd Ward. But they had like the outdoor concert, and it was like the guy with the band. These are black folks too. And he was playing with the accordion. Like I was out there having a time. They had all the line dances and everything. I have never heard of any of these songs, never knew anything about this. And now that I've gotten back, I swear I hear all these songs everywhere all the time. And I'm like, is it me? And it's just my algorithm is putting all this stuff there, or is this kind of sound spreading nationally now? And everybody's hopping on it. And I just so happened to discover it just as it was blowing up. It's messing me up in the head, like, because, Lord, I knew about Southern Soul, mainly because okay, can I tell y'all a funny story real quick? And no judgment. So for the short film, when we did Pull Over So I Can Hit You, there was a song we wanted to use, right? We wanted to use Clarence Carter's Stroking. And it was because, you know how your parents are always talking about, y'all don't know good music. Y'all don't got what we got back in our day, blah, 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 blah. The director that I worked with, one time she was talking about how her family, somebody in the family would say that, you young folks don't listen to no good music, blah, 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 blah. And then they turned the car on and out of nowhere, Stroking came out. I be stroking. And she's, what? Really? And so within the Pull Over So I Can Hit You script, again, it's taken from the podcast episode, but it's a reimagining of the podcast episode. We have a scene where the character, at least my character, because the podcast episode is about when I had to learn how to drive with the whole family in the car. Go back and check it out. It's on the YouTube channel. It's also on the streaming platforms. Pull Over So I Can Hit You. But in the reimagining that we did for the short film, my character, which is kind of cool, there's somebody playing the younger version of me, which made me feel old as hell. The character, he's, getting ready to start the car, and the dad's like, oh, you don't need no music. It's something, something, something. And the parent, he's like, I just want the music so I can kind of be relaxed. And the mom's like, if you can't relax when you without music, you don't need to be driving. And so the dad turns on some music. And so we wanted to use that song right there. However, when we reached out to Clarence Carter's people, and I ain't mad at him, you got to get your coin. It just wasn't in our budget, right? It wasn't in our budget at all. Just to use that little bit. I think we were going to use about 6 seconds of the song. We couldn't afford it. Not for that project. And so we were like, well, I make music. Why don't we just make our own version, right? And so we made our own version that kind of mirrored that song. It wasn't the same song, but we wanted something with the same theme. And so she was like, "You gotta make it have that Southern soul sound." And I was like, "Southern soul," because I wasn't really quite familiar with that term. And this goes back to our conversation about how music has been regional. If you grew up in something like a Houston, Louisiana, or that whole Gulf region, you've always been familiar with that. But me living in Spanaway, Washington, I ain't never heard of that, right? So she gave me all of these songs from like 80s onward, a lot, especially a lot of the Johnny Taylor songs and everything. I knew Johnny Taylor for Who's Making Love to Your Old Lady. I didn't know he had all the other stuff. And so yeah, anyway, so all that to say, I listened to all these different reference songs. So then she gave me free reigns to do whatever I wanted with this song. And I had a ball making it because she was like, you got to make it nasty. Because a lot of those songs are very adult. I was listening to some of them. I'm like, I listened to that song Stand in It the other day. I said, what? Y'all some nasty old people, right? Y'all got some lyrics up in here, right? And so I had to think of the most grotesque lyrics I could think of. Because mind you, if you listen to my personal music, my music is relatively clean. I think my most risque song is a song called Risk It All, which is not even really that wild, right? My stuff is pretty, I can play most of my albums in front of my mama and not shrug, right? Anyway, and so I made the music, made the song. The song was called Stick It Till It Fits, right? And then when I recorded it, I did all the vocals on it too. The song, it plays in the movie and it plays at the end. And then I disguised my voice because I didn't want anybody to know that it was me singing that. And so I somehow was able to utilize this voice that I sound like somebody's uncle from way back when in the day, right? Like, like I got one of them voices there on the song. I'm not gonna sing lyrics. Maybe one of these days I'll play the song for you, but it ended up really actually being really, really catchy. We've been trying to figure out what to do with the song because she was like, you should actually release it. I'm like, I am not releasing that under my stage name. Like, but it's actually a really good song, but it's very grotesque and like them lyrics are off the chain. But it was for the short film. But anyway, I don't know how we got on that subject, but boots on the ground. But yeah, so there's that. Mm. All right. Let's see. All right. What up, Giovanna D? Um, Somebody said, "What org is it?" I'm guessing that's about the nonprofits. The two that I were talking about, or that I was talking about, was Guns Down Friday and also Joyful Hands. And you can get access to both of those on my website. Even in the description on my video, I think I have links to them as well. Thank you, Lil Eye 3D. Let's see. Zydeco Shuffle. Okay, okay. I had so much fun down there, by the way. Y'all are very nice people down there. I just want y'all to know that I really enjoyed it down there. That was a great time. Hey Calvin, random. This is Barbara Y. What's up? Hey Calvin, kind of random question, but how many books would you say you read in a year? Also, do you have anything like a Goodreads account? I don't know. You know, the book club, we normally do 4 books a year specifically for the book club, but I'm also still doing stuff outside of that. On my I should make a Goodreads account, but right now on my website, I have a lot of book recommendations, like books that I've read that I like. So if you go to my website, there's a segment that says Calvin's like reading list in the book club, and I have a bunch of the different books that are either going to be used in a book club or books that I've read before that I think people should really check out. And they vary from. I like a lot of books on music just because I really enjoy hearing people's journey. So there's lots of books on music. There's some Black literature. There's history. There's a little bit of everything. So that's what I have. But as far as how many I read a year, I honestly don't know. Some years are more productive than others. As of right now, I've read 5 so far for the year. Yeah, I've never counted, so I don't know. I mean, it's not a whole lot, but I don't know. I don't know, maybe 20. It's not. I have no idea, honestly. I don't know. Somebody said, "Oh, so the So Good remix isn't really that nasty." That's a fun one. Thank you, Jax Millennial. Yeah, I have a song on the Before Tomorrow album. I have a song called "So Good" on After Yesterday. That's the album opener, and then the remix is on the other album for Tomorrow. See, I was trying to act like it was still the '90s with my stuff. The cool thing when you make your own music, you can do whatever you want when you're not like tied to a label. So I was like, well, I'm just gonna remix this song. That one, yeah, I will say the remix is it's a little suggestive, but it's nothing wild. I'm not on here talking about busting it and thrusting it or nothing. But yeah, I am an adult who indulges in adult things like everybody else. All right. Piscean Beauty said, but you pull from personal experience, right? I'm not answering all of these questions. If y'all hear that song, y'all, as far as the one for the movie, y'all be like, Calvin, what the heck? What? That would be the funniest thing. Like every film festival that we went to, when the credits would roll and the song would play, you just hear the whole audience just laughing at the lyrics, like, who wrote this song? Because it sounds like it could have really been one of the songs from that era at the time. I'll figure out what to do with that song. We'll figure it out. It's probably not being released under my name because it'd be just my luck. That'd be the one song of mine that blows up. That'll define my catalog. Let me stick it till it fit. Okay. Let me see. Drama 88 said I need to read more books. Yeah, I like reading because it kind of takes you into another world. Like I was saying, I really enjoyed the Maurice White book. Just because Earth, Wind, and Fire is one of my favorite groups, always has been. And they are one of the first acts my dad introduced me to. You know how your parents introduce you to people that they like? And so After the Love Is Gone was one of my favorite songs when I was in middle school. I used to love that song. And once he gave me all his vinyls, because my dad had every Earth, Wind, and Fire album, I used to just dig through all the crates. And I told y'all before, when we lived in Italy, I bought the Soul Food soundtrack for the movie. And September is the last song on the Soul Food soundtrack. And that was my first time hearing the song. And this is why I feel that music really has no age. If it sounds good, it sounds good. I thought it was a new song. I didn't know it was from 78 or 79, I think. Because on the Soul Food soundtrack, it has, it's what's on that soundtrack? Milestone, I Care About You, Drew Hill, We're Not Making Love No More, Total, What About Us? What else was on that album? Diddy, Don't Stop What You're Doing with Lil Kim and Kelly Price, Blackstreet, Call Me, Tony, Boys and Girl. Like that jump. I might have to go play that. Like that, actually, somebody bought it and never gave it back. And this stupid album's not on streaming. But anyway, September is the last song on the album. So I remember when I listened and got to the end, I was like, I like this. It was just fresh and just jam it. I had no idea it was like some older song. Same thing. I think I told this story before when I heard Michael Jackson's "Rock with You." We were in the car and it came on. And this is like the '90s. I don't know why I don't remember hearing it before then, but I thought it was a new song. Like I knew who Michael Jackson was. And again, we were living in Italy. There's no access to like MTV or nothing, so there's no music videos. You get a little bit of radio. The American radio station changed genre every hour, and the R&B hip hop piece was all in one, and that also include. Oh, they had a soul, adult, contemporary kind of mix too. And so I think, yeah, I don't know. All I know is "Rock With You" came on, and I thought it was like a new Michael Jackson song. I was like, this sounds good. Like this is nice. Okay, all right. I like that. I can't wait to see that music video when I get back to America. And then I got back to America, and that video came on. God, it had to probably be VH1 Soul because we had the box, but then the channel disappeared, and then it was VH1 Soul. And I remember that was the first time I saw the "Rock With You" video. This was probably like 1999, and I was like, oh, okay, this is a little cheap looking. This must be one of those. I thought this was a new song. How old is this? Okay, he's still black on this. Okay, but what a time! What a time! Yeah, somebody said they love that song, so good remix. I want to do a video for that song, but I like that song, but vocally I didn't really do a whole lot on it. It was more, its intended purpose was just to be a song to make you dance to it. So it's like, okay, would like to at least release one song where I'd actually do some singing. Y'all know I love to make a nice dance video, so we'll see. K&O said, dipping it and doing it in Wendy Williams' voice. I always thought that was a funny phrase. Every time she said that, I used to always laugh. She's dipping it and doing it. She said Beyonce at the Super Bowl, she was out there just dipping it and doing it. I was like, that's such a funny phrase to me because it sounds like something my mom would say if she was fussing. And you out there that wild party with them girls out there just dipping it and doing it. Like that's how she would have said it. So, yeah. Somebody said that song does not sound like it's from the 70s. Yeah, September just, and I said this before, live instrumentation always makes a song sound so much fresher. A lot of my favorite songs are songs with all live instrumentation where it's not programmed in the computer. So like Brand New Heavies, Never Stop, to me, will never get old. I still be playing it all the time, all the time. Yeah, September, well, pretty much everything Earth, Wind, and Fire has before 1981 is, very bright with all the live instrumentation. And even I told you guys their Illumination album from 2006 was actually a very, very nice album. It was current, but it was still them. I thought that was a great album. It had these really great songs. There was a song called, you may have heard their remake of Outkast, The Way You Move. Sometimes you might hear that on the adult contemporary stations. But, they had This Is How I Feel, which was this really nice collaboration with Kelly Rowland. They had another song with will.i.am called Lovely People. That was really fun. They had Live Together, which I love that song. That I might have to play that album too tomorrow. I know what I'm listening to when I'm working. Very nice album. Live instrumentation, because live instruments are always current, they don't sometimes age. I talk about that in this New Jack Swing episode with drum kits and stuff changing. Some songs get kind of encapsulated into a certain era because you associate those sounds with that era. So if we talk about industrial drums, these would be like the drums you hear on like, or even like certain kind of synth drums, but specifically industrial. You'd hear something like that on like a Karen White's Romantic or like Janet's Miss You Much. Those drums where it sounds like you're in a warehouse and there's a big echo and they're just really big. They're a great time from that era, but when you hear them, you automatically associate them with the late 80s. And so it sometimes can age certain sounds, certain songs, even though the songs are still fresh and enjoyable, you can kind of encapsulate what era that sound is from, right? Just based on those different effects. So that's what that's about. Okay. Did we talk about Angie Stone? Yes, I talked about her on the last live. Oh, I forgot about that. Less likely. What's your opinion on Erykah Badu at the Billboard Awards? I didn't see the performance. I saw the outfit. I guess with the context, she was trying to make a statement, and I guess my guess is it was centered around the Sarah Bartman conversation. But I didn't watch the performance. I don't even know when that came on. Was that on TV or what? I just kind of saw it floating around social media. But I heard she's also coming out with a new album. She hasn't had an album since, I think, 2010, right? That's the album that had Going Baby Don't Be Long on it. It's been a while. She also gives a really good concert if you haven't seen her, by the way. All right, we're going to wind down soon. I think we've had a great time on here. Let's see here. All right. Somebody said, I agree, but Rock With You did sound like disco, though. So H. Dennis, to that point, at the time that I heard the song, for that first time, I think I was 9, right? Maybe even 8. And so I wasn't at an age where I could associate genres and sounds with specific time frames yet. And that also comes back because I think about being like a kid in America in the early 90s and all those infomercials that came on. Remember when they used to sell all the CDs and stuff with the compilations and all the songs? There was one that, remember that song, If I Can't Have You, I Don't Want Nobody, Baby. I don't know who sings that, but I remember it from that commercial. But being a kid, watching like freaking Alvin and the Chipmunks, and then that infomercial would come on and that song was in it. I thought that was a new song. I didn't know it was a song from the disco era. I just thought it was out. Like, and I think when you're at a certain age, especially if you've been exposed to all the sounds and your parents are playing their music around you too, you don't really associate time with the music until you're a bit older and understand the history of the different artists. You just kind of hear it and it is what it is. So I had no idea, because I had Bad on cassette, the album. I had no idea that album was older than me. I thought it was new. I was playing that all the time. So I think some of it ties to, timing and stuff. But I will say Rock With You is definitely, it has that disco sound, definitely, as now looking back. But when I was, young, it just sounded fresh and it sounded good. And I will say Rock With You it's disco, but it's not what ended up happening with some of the people that were watering down the genre, right? Earth, Wind, and Fire is in that same boat too. Like September technically falls in that same BPM as a disco song, but I never even considered September a disco song. It's in that era, but I'd almost consider Let's Groove more of a disco song than September. I just thought it was bright, right? Their stuff was really bright. So, Rock With You, it is technically kind of like that disco song, but I saw Rock With You more as 80s funk. It was that introduction of what we were going to get until about 1984. But yeah, those are all great songs. Somebody said, Baby Boomer here. Love Earth, Wind, and Fire. They just have some great ones. Yeah, that Maurice book was really good. It had me all motivated. And what I loved, because I don't know their whole catalog, but every time he would reference a song, I would stop and then go and play the song. And that's what took me so long to get through the book, because then I started playing all the albums all the way through, right? So that was cool. Great book. Rest in peace, Maurice White. Somebody said, Drama 88 said, some music is just timeless. TLC, Waterfalls, Brandy, Monica, The Boy Is Mine, Salt and Pepper, Push It. Yeah, there's songs that you just, every time they come on, they just always sound good. It's always a good time. I know Spotify be sick of me, because every time they do that end of the year wrap up, it'd be the same 20 songs every year. They'd be like, again, this is your most played song, again, again. Like, man. Let's see. Sheila E., Gloria Estefan. Yeah, I like them. They're fun. I like Gloria Estefan's album that came out in I think that was 2011. Pharrell had produced it. It had that song Wepa on it. And there was a really fun song called Right Away that I really, really liked. That was a nice album. You want to listen to Craig David? I see he's on tour. Yeah, I like Craig David. He got some fun songs. If I had a favorite, this is the odd one out, but I really like the I'm Walking Away song. It wasn't really the R&B one. It was a bit more pop rockish. I really like that one. What's Your Flavor was cool. 7 Days, I used to love watching the video. You know how sometimes you watch something and you know it's going to happen, but you be trying to somehow manifest that it won't happen? Because remember in the 7 Days video, he kept trying to have this perfect date with the girl, but something kept going wrong and it would take him back in time and he have to keep starting over. So it was, sometimes I'd watch the video and be like, okay, this time he's the girl's shoe's not gonna get caught in the sewer. It's not gonna get caught in the sewer. It's not, damn, got caught in the sewer, right? Just all kind of random things. Or when he got to the car and the tank was empty and he couldn't get to the date. Okay, this time he's gonna get in the car and the car's gonna work. Like, I do that every time I watch Set It Off. Somehow in my head, I'm convinced that one of these days I'm gonna be watching it, and I don't know. Frankie is not gonna run. Frankie instead would have got on the bus with Jada, or got on the bus with Stoney, and they would have been on their way to Mexico, and the two of them would have escaped with the money. In my head, somehow Cleo wasn't going to get out of the car and start shooting, but I don't know what's going to happen to Cleo. But I'd just be having these different visions in my head about what was supposed to happen. I'm one of those people. Let's see. Somebody said 80s and early 90s videos were everything. I love the story they gave. I miss music videos being fun. And I get it. The industry changed. They're not really putting a lot of budget into videos anymore. I get it. But yeah, I feel bad sometimes for folks that missed out on some of these eras. I'm glad I got to catch the tail end of the good years. I'm appreciative of that. Oh yeah, yes, Rip to Dwayne from Tony. Yeah, I'm still that there. I'm glad I caught them when I caught them, but that's crazy too. Let's see. All right, is this showing my live chat, or is this okay? Cool. All right, we'll wind down. I got a few more minutes before I get off of this. This has been fun. Like I said, so the New Jack Swing episode is about an hour and 40 minutes. It's not as long as Mariah. I will never do another 3-hour deep dive again. That's too much editing, too much stress. And you see this MacBook acting crazy, right? And froze on us. Imagine trying to edit a video and it's starting to freeze and all this other stuff. But no, that comes out Monday, so that'll be fun. And then maybe we'll do another live afterwards to talk about it. I don't know. We'll see. Or we'll do something else. Let me see here. Also, like I said, I was telling everybody to kind of drop their cities and stuff because we have a few things kind of lined up. And so we're just considering places for some of these ideas. I'm trying to think of some creative things to do. So we have one idea that's kind of cemented and locked in. So there will be, I know for sure right now there's 3 events in 3 different cities. I'll give a bit more details once I get the full okay to put everything out there. And then there's going to be some additional stuff outside of that. And then we'll do something separate for DC as well, since this is hometown. You got to make sure you do right by your own people. So yeah, that's coming. So, somebody said, I last saw Dwayne Wiggins perform with Tony back in 2018 at the charity event. So I actually saw them twice. We caught them in the year that they announced that they had got back together with the originals. There was still a different lineup of Tony touring. So I caught that lineup, and they actually had a fun show. I ain't gonna lie, they were actually really, really good, right? And then we caught the originals, so I got to kind of get the best of both worlds. I was like, okay, all right. So that was fun. Let's see. Somebody said, love the music videos back in the day, the ones on BET Midnight Love videos. So I just miss music videos being on TV. Like, you don't even realize how much you used to just have them on in the background. I know when I got ready for school, I turned on music videos to get ready while I was getting ready for school and stuff. So that's how I usually got introduced to everything. Friends came over, like we were in high school and stuff, and we were just all hanging out at my house or something. I had music videos playing on in the background if I wasn't annoying my friends trying to play one of my Janet DVD concerts or something. My friend used to always say, my friend Tanae was always like, yeah, I feel like you're the only one keeping BET, what's the music channel? BET Soul and Business. Because I literally still was keeping cable just to keep that channel, but then I finally switched over to YouTube TV. So I don't even watch that anymore. But yeah, there's days I'll just put on, a music video and let it run through YouTube and just let them cycle different videos. But the only problem is YouTube will play the same kind of cycle of what you watch. So I got to keep adding new videos into the pocket. But I will say, since I did the New Jack Swing episode and I had to download 600 videos, I got introduced to a few videos that I've never seen before. So that was really cool. All right. It's 1 o'clock, y'all. I think we have had our time. This has been fun. Thank you guys for sitting with us. I apologize for the nonsense with the equipment, but hey, like I said, I had to prioritize. Do you want the MacBook or do you want the car? Right? So yeah, the laptop money went to the car, but now we'll get us a new MacBook soon. The New Jack Swing dock is the official last project in this MacBook, and then I'm gonna sunset this thing and let it go on to glory because I've literally had this thing since 2012. This MacBook has gone through, when I had the Generation Black web series, it has gone through 4 studio albums because I recorded all 4 studio albums in my recording software with Pro Tools was in this same MacBook. So 4 studio albums. That doesn't include that folder of 200 songs that didn't make any of those albums, all of that. That includes every podcast episode, every YouTube video, whether live or pre-made, all the video content I do on the side for the other companies and all of that stuff. It also includes all the editing software. Like I edit and do the graphics for all my album artwork and stuff. Well, minus these 2, I actually had somebody else do. But the first 2 albums, I did all the artwork and all that crap. And well, not crap, but all that stuff. Like literally everything is in this MacBook. All of the pictures and video that I took of the 11 years with the kids, all of that is in there. Thank God for the cloud. So this has gone through many projects, and it's time to retire. This thing is like, Calvin, I'm tired. I can't do it. I be turning it on and that little rainbow circle just be spinning. Like, I don't know. We're going to see if we can get through it today. We're going to try. But that Mariah one took this thing out. It was like, please don't do no more projects. And I'm like, well, I already started. We got to finish. So there's that. Thank you, SEK. They said, I always miss your lives. The time difference is big. Replay. No worries. As long as you're watching, we appreciate it. But yes. Okay, guys. Like we said, there's a lot going on. So stay kind of in the know. Again, you observe, but you don't have to overindulge. Protect your peace of mind. And yeah, stay safe, stay sane, mind your business so that you can age well. And I will catch you guys on the next one. See you guys later. Good night.